Are we live, Chip? It's a bit quiet, but I think we are live, so I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. We are now live. This is a Redmond City Council study session held on Tuesday, April 14th, 2026, commencing at 7:04 p.m. All council members are in attendance. Thank you so much. We had just finished a recent special meeting with a couple of commission candidates, so we're a couple minutes late coming on the air. I also wanted to acknowledge that we've had a few meetings at City Hall this afternoon, including many of the team members who will be sitting with us through the study session tonight and helping us out, probably ate a granola bar for dinner at their desk. So thank you for extending your workday with us. It's been a busy evening. We're excited to work with you. So there are 3 items on the agenda tonight. First is the 2027-2028 budget process, departmental budget overviews. Tonight we'll be looking at the executive, finance, human resources, and technology and information services departments. We will also study the long-range financial strategy and fiscal policies, and finally have council talk time. So for the first item on the agenda, the 27-28 budget process with the department overviews, I'll introduce Kelly Cochran, Finance Director, for this item. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You did an excellent job introducing our item. I'm not sure that there's much more to say other than we have had some switch arounds with department scheduling as we work with their availability. So thank you for working with us on that and your flexibility. I will go ahead and turn it over to Melissa Files, our COO, to get us started with the executive department, and we'll start with finance after that. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. As Kelly said, I'm Melissa Files. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for the city, and joining me today is Lisa Maher, the Assistant COO. She'll be sharing some budget information with the Council as we go through. So just an overview of the Executive Department. The Executive Department provides leadership mostly in a variety of ways. Most of the divisions, well, I should say all the divisions, work cross-departmentally in the city to bring the goals of the city together and using strategic leadership as well as transparency and excellence, as you see in the mission statement. For an overview of the departments, on this slide is all the divisions that we have in the executive office. The leadership includes Lisa and I and the mayor and Zach, who you heard from today. We look over city operations, regional work, as well as legislative support and again, oversight of operations. The city clerk, which you're all familiar with, works with the council on agendas as well as the mayor. One of the things that we'll talk about in the city clerk's office is public records requests, which takes up a lot of time in our city clerk's office, as well as they oversee records management and the hearing examiner. City council, your budget sits under the executive office. Communications, which you also heard from today, so I won't go over that. You also heard about our READY initiative today. The city attorney's office under legal and litigation, as well as environmental sustainability, which I know you hear from Jenny, our environmental sustainability manager, on a regular basis in committee of the whole. All of these divisions, except for 2, are prior divisions that we've had. There are 2 new ones, which was grant management and the city attorney's office. So as you recall, in this budget, we actually had a long-time contracted city attorney. Now we brought that in-house. And grant management was new to look over our grant management systems, policies, and workflows. So that is new in the executive office. I'm going to turn over to Lisa to go over some budget highlights, and then I'll be back to talk about performance measures.
So over the next 2 slides, I'm just going to highlight a few areas for you as a quick update. So on the baseline budget plans, I wanted to just chat real quick about the two largest changes, percentage changes you might see in the right-hand column. One being for environmental sustainability between the 25-26 budget and what is proposed and will be coming to you in the 27-28. That is an addition of another FTE that was in the long-term 6-year plan budget that you saw last year for environmental sustainability, as well as Jenny was reclassed to up to a management position for the people who now report to her. The other one that you'll see is that's a large increase from 25-26 going forward is for respect, equity, diversity, and inclusion. And again, that is reclassification of the positions, bringing it up, both positions up to a higher level. So the deputy and a program administrator that you heard from Zach earlier this afternoon in committee meeting. So most of those increases sit solely in staff costs for those two programs. And then just also wanted to highlight that this budget, we also added a domestic violence advocate to our prosecuting attorney's office, which was a position that we just transferred the FTE over to the prosecutor's office because that is really where the bulk of that work sat. So that was just a transfer between criminal justice and over to the executive budget there. On the next slide,
We'll take questions at the end of their presentation. Thank you.
On the next slide, as Melissa mentioned, these are the two newest divisions for the executive department, and you will see full baseline budget offers for those two divisions this year as they were service enhancements for 25-26. So that is what you'll see there. Moving on to the actual programs and other things that were funded for service enhancements. I'll just give you a quick overview here. The program administrator for environmental sustainability, we did hire Micah Bunkowski, as I know you've heard from him in several presentations, to the environmental sustainability team, and he's had been able to advance new programming, including the Clean Building Incentive Program, a pending e-bike incentive program, and to build out our electrical vehicle strategy work. In the Green Building Incentive Program support, last year Council adopted new requirements and incentives to advance the green building practices in new construction, and we're finalizing guidebooks to make the program more accessible, and those resources are expected to be live this summer. For clean buildings, the work was managed by Parks, is underway now, and the city is on track to meet our state mandated energy use targets for City Hall and for the public safety building, and then parallel CIP projects that make energy efficiency upgrades at both buildings are nearly completed. And then the last two, for the RE Plus program support as the city works towards zero waste of resources. We have partnered with the two nonprofit organizations to educate and engage the community around zero waste and recycling. And the biannual greenhouse gas inventory for 23 and 24 are now complete and published on the city's website. On the next slide, as you know, Council adopted in December the ESAP refresh, and we are working on implementation now. The full amount of the funding was expended, but we were able to offset some costs with a grant, which is why you see there appears to be surplus in funds. The excess funds, which is technically from the grant, are being used for implementation activities for the ESAP. The car share subsidy, we do have partner conversations going on and continuing, but the project has not launched yet, and we are proposing that this project be rolled over in the 27-28 budget cycle. And then the last here is the solar storage. That work is being led by Parks to complete a 30% design for the solar energy storage system at the Redmond Senior and Community Center, and the project is on track to be completed by December with half of the funding proposed to roll over into 27-28. see, again, earlier today in committee, you got an update on the recruitment process that is in the works for the program specialist or program administrator for DEI, so that is in the works. We are currently adding that extra focus edition that council provided funding for, so we are now at a full 4 every year, 1 every quarter. And then the extra communication FTE is the graphic design specialist that our communication manager outlined for you earlier. On the next slide, this outlines our fully now operational legal services, so our city attorney's office, as well as the one-time funding that we have supplemented through Ogden Murphy Wallace while the attorney's office was set up, as well as some specialty areas that we utilize them for via contract. And on the next slide, this outlines the grant administrator, the grant admin support position, fully operational, and then the federal lobbyists that we work with Manat, which I believe you have a meeting coming up with Leslie from Manat to bring you up to speed on the federal lobbyist work. And then the last position was the other communication FTE, which is focused on and hired in 2025 for the additional communication needs around the World Cup, and has also studied up and been added as one of our 4th PIOs for the communication team to increase our emergency messaging accessibility to the city.
I'm going to quickly highlight some of the measures. I know there are quite a few slides here, and I know you have quite a few departments to get through. So I'm just going to highlight some things. The measures you see here are for our Environmental Sustainability Action Plan, which our Environmental Sustainability Manager monitors. I'd also like to point out that there is a dashboard on our website that has all the environmental sustainability performance measures in it. The third bullet that you see, as you see, the targets say NA, so I just want to point that out. Since the council approved a refresh of the Environmental Sustainability Action Plan, we have moved the dates from 2030 to 2040, so we still need to do an analysis of what that baseline looks like now, and that will happen during the summer. So we will see this performance measure again in the budget, and it will have the numbers in it. For the next measures have to do with our prosecutor's office. Just to let you know, the Victim Services Paralegal is a new measure. As Lisa pointed out, we have moved to the domestic violence advocate, and so we are looking to track now that through the prosecutor's division rather than police. On the next slide, you will see most of this data comes from the community survey, which you will see later this year for the 2026 community survey. Some of this data does depend on what is going on in the city. So if you look at the last measure, when you see the 2023 where we had 2,200 number of responses to the annual community survey, as well as the questionnaire that we put on the website, that had to do with Plymouth housing. So it really depends on what's going on with the city as to who goes in and fills out that questionnaire. So just wanted to point that out because that number is an anomaly on this page. On the next page, the council also has measures, so you'll see those in the last two boxes, as well as translation services. And I know that council asked about translation services today when we talked about communication. So we have some new programs that council approved in our budgeting for equity portion of the budget in 25-26. So we are looking at those measures to make sure that they match kind of the programs that we have ongoing right now. I think this is the last one. We have quite a few measures in our Respect, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion program. They are in the READY plan. The READY plan does contain quite a few measures. We are looking at those to make sure that we put the right ones in the budget that communicate what we want the community to see in the budget. So we will be looking at these measures. I also would point out that we are taking some of those measures from the READY plan and creating a dashboard. So TIS is going to help us with that. So you will see more of these measures out on our website. So those are the highlights for performance measures. I do want to highlight some of the things that we have accomplished this year. Lisa has already said some of them, so I won't go over those, but as you know, you approved the ESAP refresh. That is completed. As Lisa pointed out, the city attorney's office is now functional. We did do quite a bit of work on the council workflow process and agenda memos, so changed that process. The World Cup communications are ongoing. And then, of course, the grant management division that became functional this biennium. For budget challenges into the next biennium, we will continue to seek out new grant revenues and make sure that the new policies and standard operating procedures that have been put in place for grants citywide are working, and that they have streamlined the process like we thought it was going to happen in our grant processes. So we will continue to work on that. As I said in the city clerk's office, public records requests are increasing exponentially. So we are looking to find better ways through technology to search out information people have requested. It has become more complex. So now it's not only emails that we're looking for, but it is chats, it is texts. So the city clerk's office does an amazing job with the people that they have to answer the public's request, but it is getting, the quantity is more as well as the complexity is increasing. It is always our goal to communicate effectively, and I know council will continue to have a conversation about how we communicate with our community and how we get responses from our community for things that we would like to know. As you heard from Zach today, we will continue to implement the READY strategic plan, as well as we continue to implement as much of the environmental sustainability plan as we can with the staff that we have. So those are some of the things that we'll be looking at as we go through the next budget cycle. And with that, I think we're done, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, team. Director Cochran, was the intent to kind of take questions for each department kind of as you've got the team here?
That would make sense.
Okay,
Thank
great.
you.
So council, what questions do we have regarding the executive department and the information that was shared? Councilmember Parsi and then Councilmember Prakria.
Thank you. If we go to slide number 4, I wanted to confirm if the changes, when it says addition of one noteworthy changes, are they included in current number of FTEs listed in the column to the left of noteworthy changes?
I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Finance Department, that in the noteworthy changes, it is saying that we had the addition of one ongoing FTE in the 25-26 budget, and then we did a reclassification that raised Jenny to the manager. So it is reflected in both numbers that you see there for 25-26 and 27-28.
Thank you. I have a couple more questions.
Maybe one follow-up and then we'll go back around.
Page number 6, I am seeing kind of highlighted colors of orange and gray, and I don't fully understand what kind of constitutes a color change. What should I be looking at?
I believe the ones that are highlighted in the light orange color are particular to executive department. Does that make sense? And those are the ones that I spoke to.
Thank you so much. Councilmember Procria.
Thank you for the presentation. If we turn our attention to slide 12 on the, so slide 12 on the dashboard indicator of community-wide greenhouse gas emissions. What I'm seeing here is like a very precipitous drop from 2023 to 2024. This is a 21.5% drop, and I'm just wondering if there was a specific factor that caused it in between those years, and if not, why we don't project out the same rate of drop for our targets in 2026 and 2028. If we have another drop from 2024 to 2025, well, 2025 has already passed, but if the trend were to continue down exponentially in the same way, we would be at 500,000 already in 2025. So I'm just wondering about this, and this may be more too specific a question to ask, but like, how do we get such a drop?
Do you want, go ahead.
I actually don't have that answer with me prepared, but I believe that is in the different change that we made in the ESAP. So I can follow up with council and get you the specifics on that if that works for you.
Yeah, I believe it was probably the change in our electricity purchasing. We changed to Green Direct, which is a lower carbon, has a lower carbon density, and that made us a very significant change. That was a one-time, very significant impact, but Lisa can follow up. Thank you. I believe Council Vice President Nueva Camina had the next question.
Thank you, Chair. A question around the public records request. We're seeing an increase in that. Do we have any reasoning or theory as to why we're starting to see such an uptick recently?
I would have to ask our city clerk, but I will ask her that and I will get back to you. I do know that it hasn't been a recent uptick. It's been, just gradually ticking up. Some of the public records request has to do with discovery for litigation. Some of it has to do with just curiosity, because though it runs the gamut. We also deal sometimes with commercial entities wanting information from the city. And there's probably 100 different reasons why people ask us for information, but I can have Cheryl confirm that.
Thank you. I'm interested in like what type of trend that we're seeing, so that we can go to the source of it, so that instead of adjusting and becoming flexible with putting resources into it, then how it is there a trend or something that we can kind of get ahead of it to curtail it that way?
Thank
Just
you.
one other little piece, if I could just add, as Melissa was saying, emails and all the different things that we perform search on. Now we have the expansion of AI and the use of it in cities. So all of the AI work that is utilized by city staff is a public record. So also now is being added as a large back end that everything there, and if you use it, you might create multiple different questions and different changes as you're in an AI piece of software that creates multiple records, and those are all discoverable. So that is also adding to the workload.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilmember Soni and then Councilmember Forsyth.
Page number 5. For the legal services, we're talking about 3 new FTEs, which is the new plan for 2027-28. And then, so basically the idea is to have a centralized legal services. Just curious to know how it was done before. Was that outsourced for the legal services? And now we are just trying to bring everything centralized in-house. And if it was outsourced, what would be the savings in terms of doing it outside versus doing it as a centralized legal services in-house?
Sure, and yes, you're right. So we had a long time contract with Ogden Murphy Wallace, and we brought that in-house. I'll have to remember, we presented the savings in the budget discussions, and I'll have to get back to you on what that was. It was fairly substantial. What we did do was do an on-call contract with Ogden Murphy Wallace in order to get the transition set. So I will get you the exact numbers, but I suspect that we will have probably another savings because we will probably lower those on-call services now that our city attorney's office is up and running. But I will follow up with you on that.
Thank you. Councilmember Forsyth?
Thank you. Really excited to see the move of the DV advocate into the attorney's office. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that position and if that is someone already in that role, if it's going to be a new person in that role, and a bit more of what you understand the scope to be?
So it was who was filling the position was a current member of our prosecuting attorney's office that specialized in DV victim support that we put and promoted into that position. And then as far as the work, so much of the work of the support for domestic violence victims sat inside of the prosecuting attorney's office, even though the position was technically housed in the police department budget. Most of the work was done out of the prosecuting attorney's office, and it really is fully the support for victims and supporting them through the process from the beginning to the end. So it is a lot of one-on-one work, very specialized work that this position is is addressing.
This is more of a reclassification and moving it into the correct budget instead of a shift or anything.
Yeah, it was, I believe, the same classification in the police department. Yeah, just a transfer of moving the duties from one department or one division to another.
Okay, I'm interested to know if we need to expand that, as we've seen from our policing reports, an uptick in domestic violence reports. And with the stressors of the world right now, I can imagine that we might end up needing more support for that department.
Thank you. I believe Councilmember Kritzer, you had the next question.
I did. Thank you. And I'm not sure if you. Now I'm looking back on whether we covered on the World Cup. Is that? Are you about to touch on that in the next section, or is that appropriate to talk about in this section? Okay. I had looked at that, but I was looking back on whether we had dove in on that. So on World Cup. We did decide to make this big investment with the idea that we were going to see a return on investment for economic development. And I think it'll be good for us going into the next budget cycle for us to be able to look at those outcomes and get a sense of what we learned from it, what was money well spent, and then what was things that maybe we could have been more efficient with as well. And I think similarly on the communications positions that we added on. We had a little discussion about it at committee today, but I am interested as we go to the next budget. And also, I think learnings for the future for more opportunities of where do we scale on things that are coming into our community and kind of think about that. So, because it was a significant choice and investment for us to make into this, and I think it has caused a lot of excitement in our community. But the questions on like how much has it, and I know that I've talked about this with our tourism staff and with our staff, economic development staff, about the ways that we're actually tracking that. But I think it will be important for the council to have that in advance of the budget process if we're going to look at any kinds of investments in the future, which might be well advised, but I think to kind of think through that. And then I'll just also note on the ready FTEs, I guess one question that I had was that in the way that you presented it here, it looks like in terms of like what has happened is that there was an upward classification of the FTE. I would say I think really the decision that we ended up making was to move it into the executive leadership bucket, and there still, in my opinion, should be 2 ready FTEs. So looking at this upcoming budget, I think, just thinking about in future enhancements, that we may want to look at ensuring that we have 2 FTEs in there. And either you might see it as an enhancement to the executive leadership to have a position, or that we have 2 FTEs, or we add an extra FTE into the ready bucket.
Thank you. I will chime in here at the end of round 1. I do agree that the council has been seeking to have 2 positions for the READY program, and we'll look for a solution to restore that, I think, as we continue the conversation. The one I wanted to actually ask a question about is another of the strategic priorities from this current budget cycle, and that's the federal lobbyists. So thanks so much for the update. Council had requested a chance to connect with them. Sounds like that's coming up soon. How will we know what the impact of that is, or do you already anticipate, do you know if you anticipate requesting those services be continued? This was one of the experiments for new council members. We had a kind of a new toolkit of possible revenue generators. This one faces particular challenges based on just the environment that we're in and the dollars available, but curious to hear your thoughts on that.
I believe that we would like to continue that contract. So we will be, the federal lobbyist has been instrumental in our federal earmark asks and making sure that they get in front of legislators. So the AC pipe replacement, where we got a federal earmark, was one of theirs that they really pushed through for us. We have 2 that they are working on right now that are big dollars. So that's kind of how we're measuring how they're helping us basically collect money from the federal government for some big projects that we have going on that will help us save some money that we don't have to spend kind of general tax dollars on. They have also helped us just push forward some of the legislation that you all have on your legislative agenda for the state. So just letting our federal legislators know kind of what we have on our docket and what we're looking at. So they have been great about that as well. They also have been really good about connecting with our commercial partners that also have lobbyists in the federal government, like Microsoft and Amazon, making sure that what we're trying to do is aligning with some of their lobbying efforts. So those are 3 things off the top of my head that they have really helped us with, but you will hear more about that when you meet with the federal lobbyist.
Okay, thank you. Council will go for round 2, knowing we've got a few other departments to get to, but Councilmember Parsi?
Thank you. I had a hopefully quick question. I wanted to orient myself a little bit better with receiving this information. There's a lot of data being provided to the council, both for us and the listening public. I wanted to better understand how would you like us to use this information for decision making? If there is something that you can accompany, at least for the future sections, that would be really helpful. And kind of what takeaways you would like us to have from this data.
So this is really just a preview of what is happening or what has happened in the 25-26 budget as a preview for 27-28. So just trying to ground the council in what our departments do, what we look at as far as performance measures go, what were the changes in this biennium and the progress that we're trying to make for the work program that came out of the 25-26 budget. So that in 27-28, when you see new programs or that we're continuing programs, you have sort of the baseline information that you need going into the next budget process.
Councilmember Kritzer.
Just a quick follow-up on the federal grants or federal lobbyist and then federal grants work. Something that I think we should think about as we go into the future budget is just, which I think when we passed the last budget and we added the federal lobbyist, or when we were developing that, it was in a different administration and some things have changed since then. It seems like we've still been successful, for example, in getting federal grants and with our new grants person as well, and having a federal lobbyist. I do think it would be important, especially as we see an evolving set of expectations and restrictions on federal grants, for us to find time for the council to understand what types of things we have been attesting to and that we might be asked in the future to attest to, because I have heard even continuing things going on in order to receive these grants, and to be aware of and to be aware of where we might draw those lines or become ineligible due to our city's values, if depending on kind of the future of these things. And I don't feel like we've had that conversation but it seems like we've still been able to succeed in getting grants, but I am curious in what exactly we have attested to in order to get those grants and the ways that we have gone about that. I don't know what's the right forum for us to have that conversation, but I am very interested in that, as well as for us to think about the potential, the possibilities as we go forward in the budget around that.
That's a great comment. The federal money that we are currently receiving was under old kind of grant rules. And as you say, those grant rules may or may not be changing. It seems like every day, something new is coming out about federal grants. But what our grant manager is helping us with is scouring through those grant contracts. So as you say, there's nothing in there that it does not align with our values. So, and if it is ill-aligned, then we would not take the money. So we have been looking at that as well, but it does, I have to say, it does change from day to day, week to week about what those contracts look like.
And I will just add, as a concern that's been raised, is that there's new policies, for example, proposed to put attestations essentially on the SAM.gov system, in which distributes those grants in order to access anything through that system, to have to align with executive orders that I don't feel fall in line with our city's values. So I think those haven't gone in place yet, but they have been proposed, and I think we should track those closely.
Thank you. Councilmember Soni?
This is actually not a new question, just a follow-up from Council Member Forsyth. So for the domestic violence attorney that we are talking about, so does that mean that we will be able to provide the pro bono lawyers to our victims who will be doing? Because in this case, definitely one attorney looks very less, seeing the number of cases that has been increased.
So let me just say the question back to you so we make sure we understand. Are you talking about attorneys for domestic violence victims?
Yes.
Whether or not we provide those, or?
Yeah, so the attorney that city is going to recruit specifically for domestic violence, is this going to provide the services to the victims, or this is only for city's perspective? I just want to clarify that, I wasn't clear.
The domestic violence advocate helps domestic violence victims get the resources that they need to make it through the legal system, as well as helping them with resources just based on kind of where they are in their life circumstance. So we don't provide attorney services to them, but we help them connect with services.
Okay. Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for the executive office? At this time, this is just, again, a preview of the baseline budget, help ground the current understanding, and also get a quick peek under the hood at some of the decisions that we made in this budget, how they are performing. As always, we encourage you to connect with the staff offline if you have further questions. Does that sound okay, Director Cochran? We're dual aircraft directors at the moment, but I'll let you take it away and introduce the next team.
All right, next team is me. So in the finance department, really our role is a supporting department. We are here to help establish boundaries and guidelines and strategies and the support that our departments and partners need in order to implement their solutions and keep operations going. So that is our goal, is to make sure that we are out there working with departments, not ahead of them, not behind them, but making sure we're working collaboratively to achieve all that we have committed to. The finance department is a full-service finance department. Really, the only function that we don't have that you may see in other jurisdictions is payroll, which reports to HR. The our baseline budget offer, we really have one that encompasses most of our department. Some of our staff do reside in utility offers or in some of the baseline offers that they are directly supporting. But in our fiscal accountability offer, the major changes really have to do with our expected increases in risk insurance. We have seen some high renewal rates in the past. We don't expect our next renewal to be as high as they have been, but we still expect it to be accelerating at a rate that's higher than inflation or things would suggest. The other cost that we are privileged to pay for is the state auditor's office. And so in order for them to audit us, we do provide them with a fee, and will reflect that increase in our baseline budget offer. We have one of the service enhancements coming from the finance department, which you heard about earlier today. So we started a lot of purchasing and procurement types of improvements with the implementation of our new financial system a couple of years ago. And that implementation provided us with a lot of opportunities to become more efficient, opportunities to collect more data and be able to help departments monitor and grow some of their programs. And we wanted to take that effort and focus on it, make the improvements that we can before we start working on the implementation of a contract management system. So far, what our staff has done is documented our as-is processes, the things that we're doing now, have made a lot of improvements when it comes to the coordination or the workflow of work within our departments or partnering departments. Our next step, though, is to look at what we are doing when it comes to our contract boilerplates. Have we applied all policies? Do we have standardization? And get those things in place, and then start working on sort of what would the configuration of a contract management system look like, and then what would that mean to our resources. So we're doing the best that we can to get prepared for that software implementation when it comes about in 2027. The measures that we use is, first of all, our community investment rate, and we'll talk about that in a later presentation. We used to call that our price of government, and essentially it is the percentage of our community's income that they are paying towards city services. And it is a measure that we have established boundaries on, and it provides us some context when making decision about funding levels. It doesn't provide all the context, but it is a good mark of what is happening in the community. We've added some new measures for us, utilizing the new data, the new processes that we have available. These measures are in support of citywide efforts. So whether it's DEI, and we're wanting to make sure that we have diversity in our vendors, or if it's environmental sustainability, how is our purchasing policies, How are we, the results that we're getting from the implementation of that policy? What are the results that we're seeing? Just trying to keep track of really the progress that we're able to make with those newly implemented programs. We also look at the city's bond rating. Also lucky enough last year to reconfirm our AAA bond rating. And it really is a measure that speaks highly of not only our financial performance as a city and our decisions and our economic climate, but also reflects a great deal about the strength of our fiscal policies. That is typically the strongest remark that we get is that our fiscal policies really do keep us at that AAA rating. There are some risks that we have to the city that are sort of out of our control, one of them being King County and potential rate increases that we may see through them. It's something that all of the cities in our area that are contracted with King County for wastewater treatment are dealing with. But for now, we have a AAA rating. We will be due to reconfirm that rating when we issue new bonds or if the rating agency reaches out and wishes to speak to us. The next measure is regarding our misstatements in our financial statements. And prior to 2023, we actually had some struggles. So namely, the challenge is that the development of our financial statements is currently done on spreadsheets. There is not a software solution for that yet, which means that you change a number here and you sort of have to follow it all the way through, which you should be expecting us to do. The difficult challenge comes in times such as the pandemic or the funding that we were receiving after to help with recovery. Those came with rules that were often late breaking and caused some last minute changes in what we're doing. One of the thrilling things to tell you about is we are near complete with the implementation of a software system that will help us to automate that development. So we have been so far able to mimic the results of our 2024 financial statements, and we will use that new software to develop our 2025 software. The efficiencies are incredible, and I'm so excited to see the attention of our accountants move towards analysis instead of preparation. You know, your brain gets a little exhausted when you're looking at numbers. We will also be able to start producing quarterly financial statements, which will give us not only a quicker year-end completion, but also a heads up on things that we may need to be monitoring. So I'm happy to see it doesn't show a bad performance there, but if we went back a little bit, it hurt sort of a lot. Yeah, thank you. Got it off at 23. And our reserves, we have not gone into our reserves for, I don't think since the Great Recession, where we carved out a little bit of our reserves to commit money to the community, which then we rebuilt. We are actually working to increase reserves across the city and bringing us in alignment with best practices. So I'm not concerned there, but do want to make sure that we are communicating that result. Highlights, we've mentioned some, certainly maintaining the bond rating and getting the implementation of the financial statement developer tool in place has been great. Our program manager in our department that works with tax payments put an improvement in place that allowed us to change reporting requirements for customers that pay utility taxes. It was a small change, but it did create quite a bit of efficiencies, and she's been able to utilize that time focusing on her other responsibility, which is our risk management program, and she's continued to make great improvements there for us. The rest of these improvements really sort of follow up on opportunities that became available to us once we implemented the new software. And what these really mean in terms of improvement or outcomes is that these have allowed us to free up 2 positions within the finance department and reallocate them towards service gaps that we had. So we have made a really big reduction in the amount of time that it takes to get things through our accounts payable process. We were able to take a person, or not a person, a position when it became vacant and reallocate it towards accounts receivable. We did not have a centralized accounts receivable person in the city, and now we're working on centralizing that, getting our collections to process documented and consistent. We've also been able to take a position from purchasing and have that person focus on getting all the rest of our work to the next level when it comes to what's available to us after our software implementation. So helping us get new data in, helping us get new reports created, helping take on some of the testing work before it goes into the hands of some of our subject matter experts, leaving them more time to do their important daily work. Looking at what is challenging us in the last budget, I wanted to bring back an update of a challenge that we were coming into the last budget process with. You basically had Haritha and I at the beginning of the last budget process. We were down 9 positions within the finance department due to staff relocating and a lot of retirements, and have had the opportunity to onboard really an incredible group of folks that have stayed and are sitting back there helping us very efficiently across the board, and so that's been amazing. So they came from all sorts of different organizations from different places across the country, and it's been a real privilege for Haritha and I to sort of work behind them and help support them in the implementation of their ideas. So feeling very happy that we are not challenged at this time with resources to move forward. We do have a backlog. We have a plan for the backlog, and we have sort of agreed upon service levels, agreements with the departments that we support. Where we struggle at times is at the resources that are required to not only implement new technology for ourselves, but also to support other departments. Most technology, not all, but most, has some type of connection to the city's financials. And so we are typically at the table to help implement those solutions as well. We have a great partner in TIS that helps to manage our workload and schedule projects around it, but some things become a priority, and then we adapt. We don't expect to need to request new resources to deal with those challenges, but that is where we're currently sitting. And any questions?
Thank you so much, and congratulations on having such an awesome team.
Yep.
Are there questions from the council? Council Vice President.
Thank you. Thank you, Director, for all of that, and Haritha, thank you as well. A question on increasing of reserves. Is that in response to, we've got a lot of flags indicating a likely recession. We've got a lot of things that are happening to our industry around here. Are we increasing our reserves because of that, or are there other reasons for doing so?
So every biennium we review our fiscal policies, and when we reviewed them going into the 23-24 budget, Best practice for financial reserves or holding of financial reserves had increased just across the industry because of, I think the impacts of the pandemic. We didn't have those issues ourselves, but believe that, growing our reserves is the smart thing to do. As our costs increase, we certainly always, put away what were required, but it felt appropriate to grow to an industry standard.
And we may revisit that topic when we get to the fiscal policies in the next piece. Thank you. Councilmember Forsyth.
Thank you. Really appreciate the answer to that question because I do think the growing concerns, it makes sense for us to have larger reserves, so appreciate that. On that note, we don't often get to talk about insurance, so wanted to check in with you all and see, since we had recently bought into the larger state insurance policies for our city, how's that working for us? Do you have any feedback, any thoughts on that process, and any other insights you can give us?
We do. So the other Kelly, who works on our risk management program, is very active in looking at all options that are available to the city. We are, in fact, looking into making a change, looking at what that change would mean to the support the city receives, to the risk that it would reduce, and the cost. We plan to bring that to council before the end of the summer, just to give you a heads up of what that may look like and when change may occur. Right now, we want to make sure that that new program does not conflict with the city's values or with certain expectations that we have for, say, public safety that we want to maintain. So we're looking at sort of the risk of that and gathering our facts, and we will bring that to council soon.
Councilmember Kritzer.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for all the good work. I'm glad to also hear that you've been successful in staffing up, and that presents an interesting moment to have so many new staff in the department, so very interesting to hear about that. One decision we made, actually I think it was 2 bienniums ago, but then it really went into effect this biennium, was the change on credit card fee charging, or charging for credit card transactions. And when we looked at that in the budget, it did free up budget for us to be able to do some other things that the council was also very interested in. I will say I've heard a lot of community feedback on that switch in the actual implementation. So curious to hear from you on, in particular, I think around the auto pay function. One, how you think it's going, and if whether we could get data on the adoption of the auto pay through the current, and whether there's any potential, like looking forward, of ways that we might be able to invest perhaps in this upcoming budget on technological solutions to make it easier for those who use credit card for payments to, because that was, I think, the biggest thing. It was like almost the fee wasn't as much of an issue as the auto pay, but also the fee, we got some feedback on.
Certainly the fee is an issue. Us being able to implement a solution that fits our needs as well as still provides the level of service that we want to is where we really have a conflict. It's not so much the technology as it is the Visa banking rules and what they require. So what we have put into place is compliant with those regulations and requirements. We're there, it's implemented, we're saving money, but it certainly doesn't feel good or efficient, customer service friendly. Any of those things are those are missing from the solution that we have in place. The folks that in the utility billing department that really took the brunt of that implementation have every detail of data that you could possibly want of what they've been through. And certainly the amount of customers that they serve to get switched over was amazing. The front desk from Parks has been very instrumental in helping with that as well. But nonetheless, we still look at ways to remove ourselves from the requirements that we are obligated to under Visa by looking at different banking agreements or different banking contracts that might allow us to have a little bit more leeway and flexibility in what we put into place. So we are actively working to try to manage things and improve.
Thank you. And I appreciate also the flexibility that I personally missed paying my utility bill. I'm going to say it on the record because I used to do auto pay, and then I couldn't figure out at first how to set it up. and there was like a grace period, I think, for residents, but and I understand that that's out there. But I would be interested, actually, the data around that of how many kind of missed payments we had, and whether there's been whether overall we have now moved to adoption, or what else we might invest in, if there's anything we can do to help our residents along with that.
Yeah, I would say that we are at adoption. We had a period of time where people didn't know what was going on, and we certainly worked very hard to manage our what we call the shut-off list or the collection list to make sure that if it was clear that they just didn't know the auto payment didn't happen, we didn't actively shut their water off. But the amount of people that are on that list has gone down drastically back to normal levels. The number of calls that we receive to get signed up for the new service or to complain about not having the service have also decreased drastically, but it really took until I would say third quarter last year to get there.
Thank you. Other questions for the finance team? Seeing none, I'll just say for myself, one of the things I'm excited about in these department overviews is, again, checking on the progress on some of the strategic work that we put into place. I feel that this one, it's harder to see, but I really look forward to the part of the process where we do get to hear the report back on some of these revenues that we were excited to try out. So you can't see that as well here for very understandable reasons, but looking forward to hearing more from your team when we get there.
Sure, and we can add a component to that to the next quarterly report so you're not waiting for the forecast.
Oh, that'd be awesome. That's great. Thank you. With that, I think we can move on to the next team.
To our HR department.
Hello, it's nice to see you all. I'm Catherine Laird, I'm the Human Resources Director. So I'll talk about HR right now. So we have an excellent mission statement, which we still believe is key. We partner with our customers to achieve shared goals, which is basically meeting their needs while ensuring compliance with employment standards. So we are also a full-service HR department. Our divisions have not changed since the last biennium, and our primary focus is on the employee's life cycle, from when an employee is newly hired to separation, and all of the divisions that you see here touch the employees in one way or another throughout their career. So our baseline budget has we have 18 FTEs, and we have a noteworthy change would really be looking at what our medical benefits and insurance premiums, they do have a tendency to rise, unfortunately, usually right around 10% increases per year. So this slide does show expenditures and not revenue, and our medical costs are through the 511 budget, which is included in this, the current adopted budget and proposed budget. So in 25-26, we did have a new FT, a Senior Human Resources Analyst, and that analyst, let's see here, a sec. Okay. So this was a service enhancement which was approved in the 25-26 biennium. And the process has enhanced HR by ensuring consistent and timely recruitments from posting to job offer. And also postings are advertised appropriately for each vacancy, plus on diversity job boards. And let's see. Sorry, I don't have my mouse. The position also guides the screening process, so from interviewing, backgrounding, reference checking, and such, to ensure we hire qualified candidates are selected. And then the position also guides the job offer, so ensuring fair and equitable pay of our candidates that we do want to make a job offer to. So under also another enhancement was an administrative specialist, which was a service enhancement approved again in the 25-26 budget. And it was also a really good add and provides really good support in 26 as well. And basically what it does is it provides data entry of our personal action notices, which are our PANs. And then the incumbents process the PANs with changes in salary, classification, working out of class, and such. And then they review to make sure that the data that has been entered is accurate as well. And then with our new HRIS system, most of the data will be automatically entered into the system, which is great, but we still need staff to be able to verify the accuracy that is entered into the system. Well, that's actually entered into the electronic form. And then we also have supplemental funding. So the funding of this workforce management supplemental has been very important to reconcile and audit post-payroll to ensure accuracy of data that has gone into the payroll system. And then basically, regardless of the payroll system that we have, whether we have our current system right now or the new system going forward, this body of work will still be beneficial just because of the looking at and auditing the information that's gone into the system. The position also, it's not even a position, it's a temporary position, but anyway, it generates a variety of post-payroll reports that are distributed to a variety of groups and departments for their operational needs. And then it also processes and updates different types of forms like the W-4, direct deposit, and such. So performance measures, we have our still the same 3 performance measures here, but we've also added a new performance measure for 26 to highlight the number of staff who enroll in professional development classes. So we don't measure the number who take the classes because we already track those who actually attend. So what we do is we compare those who have signed up to those who attend, and then we address any issues about why they haven't been attending. Department highlights, we had quite a few highlights this last year, which has been great. A couple big ones is actually the council member vacancy recruitment. So council member Sarni, got to you. And then also currently launching the salary commission. They've convened, and so that's pretty exciting. Job descriptions align with the new driver's license state law, so we have to put these laws into action, created 11 new job descriptions, and then we actually were able to increase our benefits attendance fare by 8% last year. Budget challenges, stabilization of the new HRIS system after workforce management go live. So we're going to be looking at that. We'll be running dual payroll processes for 2 pay periods. And then we also we'll be doing our change management communications to include training, standard operating procedures, regular communications after go live on any issues and that have been encountered, and then resolution of those issues. And then, of course, auditing pay periods associated with go live for 2 months to ensure accuracy of the system. And then the other compliance or budget challenges is in regards to compliance with state requirements, including like labor and industries, PFML, which is a state medical leave, administration and cost increases. We have restrictions on salary that we can offer to candidates upon hire, so we have to be careful in how we do that. Driver's license policy requirements, which was a highlight, but there's also associations with that and other types of compliance issues. And with that, Any questions?
Thank you. Council, we'll start with Councilmember Parsi.
Thank you. I have one question about the budget and fees. Page number 33. One of the areas that I was concerned about is for one-time fees that we have, if there are fees that are, say, in progress or not started, are we, for example, for the one that is not started, are we on track for spending it? I think it would generally be helpful to have a column to say things that are in progress, if they're on track, and if it's not started, are we going to spend it by the end of the year or not?
Councilmember Parsi, can you confirm that we're looking at the correct page regarding your question?
Yes.
Okay.
So for example, language access support, that is a one-time fee, not started. It would be really helpful to know if it's on track to be spent and if the money would roll over, for example.
Oh, sure. So that's one that's in a different department. So as the departments are sharing, like in this case, we heard only about the one that is highlighted in orange. That's what we heard from Director Laird today. So that's a question for a different department.
Sounds great. So a different example would be page 34, supplemental funding, actual one-time fee, actual spent. It says in progress. It would be great to know if we have kind of, if we're on track to spend all the money that we have for this year.
Yeah, we heard from the director on this, but would you like to just make this point? Oh, thanks.
Thank you. So just to make sure I'm understanding, so if we're on track to spend the funds for 2026? Yes. And in fact, we are. We monitor carefully the hours that the employee works, and then we stay within the budget that we have. So yes.
Councilmember Nueva Camina.
Thank you. And Director, both directors actually for this question. My question was very similar to Councilmember Parsi because we're seeing a very large delta between what was budgeted in a lot of the departments that we're looking at. Like on page, what are we, 33? So making sure that we are within the department. So on page 33, we're looking at 2025-2026 budget of just over $1 million, but the actual is $250,000. And so then how are we accounting for the 75% delta? And that was my question. So that's what I was hearing in Councilmember Parsi's as well.
What we can do is, when are the baseline budgets? In May, early May. So we are working on all of the baseline budgets right now. And if there was money allocated for a service enhancement and we expect it not to be spent and need to carry over, we will be able to provide you with that information very shortly. So we'll be able to provide you with the current status, what we expect to spend by the end of this biennium, and what is going to carry over. So we're in the process of collecting and calculating that.
And just to follow up, and then of course, then there's the true up later on.
Yes.
Where we balance things out.
Right. So we make our best guess right now, and after the end of the year, we'll have our actuals and we'll come back to council with a budget adjustment to help reconcile those differences.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Forsyth.
Thank you. Going back to the, oh my God, I just found it. I've been sitting here searching in the last budget and I finally found it. The human resources, maybe. Human Resources Recruitment Specialist. I vaguely remember that being a one-time budget enhancement, and it looks like this is a continuing, carrying forward, and ongoing position. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did that change? Did we find that position so useful that we wanted to keep it on, roll it into the next budget? Tell me a little more.
Can you just explain, you thought it was a budget enhancement?
I thought it was a one-time budget thing because we had so many people retiring and so many positions that we knew were going to be vacant, that we were bringing that person on for the budget cycle and not a in perpetuity position.
Right. So we did initially start out with it being a one-time enhancement, but we did add it in to our budget because of the impact that the position had. So we do have, regardless of how many recruitments we have. We need somebody that can actually do the full cycle recruitment, and there's a lot of effort that it takes to do that, and there are some departments that have large recruitments, and so we're able to we were able to provide a greater service for those recruitments, especially with the larger departments.
Okay, just making sure my memory didn't fail me.
No, that's
Amazing
good.
that it didn't. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Human Resources? Councilmember Parsi?
I wanted to better understand the measures. Are we using the performance measures as either indicators of success, or are we optimizing towards those performance measures? If we're optimizing, I do have a little bit of concern with some of these metrics if these are the main metrics that we're using. For example, if we're optimizing towards average number of days to fill a vacancy, you could also optimize to fill it really quickly with any candidate versus waiting to find the right candidate. So I just wanted to make sure that we're on the same page about how we're using these performance measures.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It really depends upon certain factors. Like, for example, turnover, we don't have any control over that, but it's really good to monitor and watch that. With regards to the recruitments, what we need to do is we want to make sure that we're recruiting timely. So we always want to get really good quality candidates, but what was happening is years past, we would take too long to recruit, and so we would lose those really top quality candidates because it just took too long and they would find other jobs. So we use these measures to make sure that we're doing our due diligence in the work that we do effectively. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's,
Maybe I can follow up offline.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for this department? Councilmember Forsyth.
Thank you. Just on that opening slide, it said HR has 18.1 FTEs. What is the 0.1?
An arm.
I actually have to default to budget on that one.
Do we have a puppy or something? Like, I'm down.
I wish.
I can answer that. So during the 25-26 budget process, we have allocated some of the directors and deputies leadership into, because like I'm guessing that it is 5% of Kelly's and 5% of Melissa's in there.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Okay, great. Seeing no other hands, it looks like on this department, we are a wrap. Thank you so much, Director. And we'll move on to the last department of the evening, which is technology.
TIS. We have Director Mike Marchand and our Deputy Director Chad Marsh here to provide us an overview of TIS.
Thank you, Director Cochran, and good evening, Council. Mike Marchand, Chief Information Officer. Our mission statement, I think it nicely encompasses what we do. Together, we empower a connected community, and community being the folks who work at City Hall, and community being the community of Redmond at large. So that is essentially summarizes everything that we do. TIS is, again, a full-service department. You know, we have multiple teams within the department. Customer care is our help desk. Infrastructure and operations manages the servers, network infrastructure. They like to call themselves the plumbers of technology. Security and compliance, GIS and EDM, that's our geographic information systems and enterprise data management. Project management and business solutions, which manage and administer all of our large enterprise applications. Baseline budget plan will look like we're estimating or forecasting currently about a 9% increase, largely due to expected contract increases in technology. We usually factor in inflationary contractual increases as technology is migrating more to subscriptions and cloud-based platforms. You can pretty much anticipate an increase every year, year over year, for the vast majority of the things that we do. Looking at the diversity, equity, and inclusion service enhancement package for 25-26, we did have one light item here, which was the translation, real-time language translation services. This was a purchase of a number of ILA, their instant language assistant devices from a company called Translate Live. It essentially used AI enhanced real-time language translation. We have 4 of these currently deployed in City Hall, one of them at the permitting counter on the 2nd floor, one in customer service desk on the 1st floor, one at the customer service desk at the Redmond Senior and Community Center, and one here in Council Chambers AV system. And essentially what this does is it will provide real-time language translation, either spoken or in text, in over 200 different languages and accents. We had budgeted approximately $30,000 for that one. We've only spent around $4,200. We had anticipated using more of these, potentially in public safety. I believe they ended up finding a smaller form factor device, which provided similar services, and it was more convenient for them to use out in the field. These were larger. I think most of them were about the size of a tablet, and there was one that's, I think, closer to the size of a couple of cell phones together. And I think the ones that public safety had found were much smaller, probably closer to the size of a pager, for those of you who remember what pagers look like. So dating myself a little bit there. For the next enhancement package, we had 3 items in here. One of them was a senior systems analyst in our business solutions team. That one's in process. We're currently using that FTE to fill or to staff additional support for the HRIS UKG implementation. So once that project is done, that position will be used to fill one of our lead analysts for our business solutions team. The GIS business analyst was a new position that we filled, focused primarily on reporting. I believe she's currently doing some great work for finance and has some more work planned for public works. And the aerial photos is a regional consortium that we joined to purchase high-resolution aerial photography that'll be incorporated into our GIS system, provide more updated photography that reflects what Redmond currently looks like. For the further enhancements, we had a couple of positions and some technology solutions. First one here was our first administrative assistant, the first department admin for TIS. She's been immensely helpful, and we're super glad to have her on the team. The second one was another one of our senior systems analysts. This was a lead, similar to the other one that we haven't filled yet, a lead analyst supporting a reorg that we did within Business Solutions. It was essentially a team of 13 or 14 analysts reporting to a single manager, responsible for all of our enterprise applications. We divided into 3 tiers, broken down by departments, each one of them with a lead. This was one of the lead positions for that group. The next one, Sentinel-1 Singularity Ranger AD Protect, real mouthful. It was a security tool for our identity management platform. That one's on hold. The tool that we originally planned to purchase, there were some issues with that one and no longer met the requirements that we had, and I think the company was in transition. So rather than moving forward with that, we went back to the drawing board and we're looking at other solutions. Do anticipate completing that one this year. It'll just be a different package to do the same work. KnowBe4 Fish ER Plus, it was an add-on to our KnowBe4 phishing simulation platform that helps to automate the response to those submitted phishing emails. So every time somebody clicks a button, previously there was a bunch of manual work that was required, and now a lot of that's been automated, saving time and letting our security analyst focus on security things. And the final one there, computer application and operating system management. That one's in progress. I believe we're in the process of signing a contract and implementing it. And essentially it'll allow us to replace an aging system that we use to manage software that gets pushed and updated on all of our city-owned laptops and servers. Performance measures, we did expand on this compared to the previous biennium. I believe the first 2 items on this list are the historical measures that we used, which was percentage of city staff that completed their yearly security awareness training and service desk requests resolved within our SLA. We expanded that to include 3 categories with items that we are soliciting feedback from city staff on. We now have an annual TIS customer service satisfaction survey that we send out, and these are 3 key indicators that I think really we can use to really measure the value and the partnership that we provide in TIS. The first one, Net Promoter Score. It's essentially a measure calculated by asking everybody how they recommend us, whether or not they would recommend us as a trusted partner on a scale of 0 to 10. It categorizes respondents into promoters if they gave us a 9 to a 10, which meant they would strongly recommend us. Passives would give us a 7 to 8, which means they could either don't really have a strong opinion, and then detractors 0 to 6. And essentially it's calculated by taking the percentage of promoters and subtracting this percentage of detractors. With a score of 38, that actually puts us in what would be considered a great level of customer service. So generally 20 or higher is favorable. Being 30 puts us in a pretty good spot. And just for comparison, if you look at net promoter scores in the IT services category, the overall median across the board, and this is all industries, is 40. So we're tracking very closely to what you would expect from an IT services organization in all sectors of the industry. Department highlights. So TIS, I certainly believe, is a very high-performing team, and we delivered on a number of key items in the last biennium. I won't read through the whole list, but a few of the key ones there. Origo Masterworks, which is a project management platform for our Public Works Department, something they've been asking for years and years and years. I think they were managing their projects using spreadsheets, and now they have a highly integrated, high-performing electronic platform to do it. The Community Health Dashboard, which reflects a lot of the metrics of our Thrive community health program. We did substantial upgrade work, modernizing the city's network infrastructure. Huge volume of service requests, over 14,000 of them in the past biennium. Extensive work on our cybersecurity platform, upgrading, increasing our defense perimeter, our ability to respond and detect threats, and a number of new technology initiatives in our pipeline. So we reviewed 44 new intakes across the city, tracking 259 enhancements and 102 new intake requests. So substantial amount of work, I think, reflects that the city has a very strong desire and a real hunger for technology. Going into the next biennium, the two key challenges we have is cost of technology. There's been a number of items in the world that have caused technology's cost to increase considerably. Tariffs are a big driver of cost increases for hardware. I think laptops, we're looking at almost twice the cost of a laptop today as we did prior to current world events. And technology adoption, again, the city has a very strong need, strong desire for more technology. So we do see a substantial need, not only on modernizing existing platforms, but to bring new platforms to bear as well. So substantial amount of work.
I think that's it. We gotta hurry.
That's
We
it,
know what's
yes.
on the next one. This is our fourth round.
Answer any questions.
Okay, thank you so much, Director Marchand. Really appreciate it. Council, are there questions for the department? Councilmember Parsi.
I would like to learn more about the real-time language translation services usage. I know that there's a lot more tools available for people to use on their personal phones. So I just want to see where we are with investments and usage and if we should continue that investment or revisit it.
Sure, yeah, we do actively monitor the amount of usage that they have. We recently just did a press release announcing that this technology was available in City Hall. We've had it deployed for a while, but we didn't want to have a release until we had a few sort of a cold launch to make sure that it wasn't incorrectly translating or providing undesirable experiences. So there is one integrated into council chambers AV equipment. I think there's a QR code that you can scan with your personal device, and you log in and allow participants in City Hall to either have translations written out on their phone or broadcast orally.
So do you plan to share back sometime the learnings about usage?
We certainly can, if that's something that council
That would be great.
desires to hear more about.
Yeah, thank you. And these were just deployed and announced as part of the big State of the City. So that video is on the website. If anyone hasn't seen a demonstration of how that works, there are media assets available. And I do know that some of our local nonprofits actually have come in and had demos and are excited to expand that technology for their services around the city as well. Thanks for that. Councilmember Pakria.
Thank you, and thank you, Director, Deputy Director. We were talking a few months back, and you'd mentioned TIS was working on a large project for human services, helping to automate away some parts of the payroll process. And I think you made brief reference to a project today that you were working with the Human Services Department. Was that the same project? If so, I would just love to learn more.
Yeah, that's the implementation of our new HRIS system that we've been working with HR to implement over the last biennium. So it will definitely, part of the current payroll process and the fact that we've got a really antiquated system requires a considerable amount of manual calculations for our complex payroll rules. Those largely, a substantial percentage of them will be automated within the new system. So once that, we're not live with it yet, but once that goes live, we anticipate that will reduce the number of manual calculations substantially.
Other questions for the director? I will chime in with one of mine. Director Marchand, I did not see the data governance project, which we touched on in committee, so we won't get into, but I didn't actually see it on here as one of the one-time projects that we funded in the budget.
That is our omission.
Oh.
And we will fix it.
Oh, okay.
I have a whole list, and I apologize.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you. No worries. We'll see that back when we see that back. Okay. Other questions? All right, Director Marchand, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. And thanks, team. Director Cochran, would you like to kind of remind us of where we go from here?
Sure. Thank you for all of the departments that have provided an overview tonight. There is one in a couple of weeks where we will be talking to a couple more departments, Public Works and Police, and then we'll finalize the last presentation a couple of weeks after that. Again, this is just helpful to bring you up to speed on things that were decided on in the last budget process, as well as give you an idea of what occurs at the department level to help you then be able to orient yourself to how you'll be reviewing the budget, which is really more at a programmatic level. So it's important for me that you know all that goes into those programs from a citywide perspective. And then we have our next presentation whenever you're ready.
Yeah, I think that we've been here for 2 hours because we had an early start. So council, is there interest in a 9-minute recess? I see that already. So we will reconvene at 8:45. Thank you so much. Good evening. We are reconvening. This is the Redmond City Council study session, and the next item on our agenda is the long-range financial strategy and the fiscal policies. This item will be introduced by Kelly Cochran, Finance Director.
Good evening. Thank you again for some time this evening. The Finance Department has been working on updates of, very significant updates on some guiding documents that are under Council's umbrella. And so I wanted to provide an overview of what's changed, why it's changed per our recommendation, understand what Council may need in addition to information that's been provided, and also understand how we can best facilitate a Council review process. So I'd like to just be able to help support your review, enhance the document with Council's guidance and suggestions, and ultimately end with some documents that we can adopt as part of the budget package in December. These are living documents. These are things that, you know, we are always actively working to keep updated as the city accepts new policies or accepts new revenue sources, begins new programs that may come with some requirements. So the long-range financial strategy is coming soon. So for the, I have the wrong glasses on. I'm like, why can't I see? Okay, we're back. So for the long-range financial strategy, we'll go over, again, some recommendations that we covered in November. Nothing has changed since then, but I want to provide you with an update and an overview for new council members. We've had some other review done, so I'll give you an idea of what's looking there. And I wanted to share with you a couple of the graphs or tools that we utilize in our looking at the budget and our opportunities and making decisions. So then we'll look at the fiscal policies, which is being shared with council for the first time, but we'll go over what that review process looked like, what the recommended updates include, and then understand what would best suit council's needs in supporting your review and additions. So, excuse me, the long-range financial strategy is a document that was created in 2005 by a council that was very focused on Redmond's future, very in tune to the fact that we were on the cusp of becoming a much more sophisticated city. That whole transition from rural to urban was really right in front of us. We still had TDs, you know, feed downtown, but we knew sort of what was coming. At the time, the budget conversations were facilitated through the review of budget line items at the very detailed level. So reviewing what was budgeted for legal or professional services, but not really what are we spending on programs and what kind of outcomes are we seeing and do we need to make any adjustments. And so what council did at that time is spent time looking at a book called The Price of Government, and from there put together in place the framework that we still operate under today. The long-range financial strategy really should serve as a plan for maintaining not only the city services that we have in place right now and we want to sustain, but also providing us opportunity for growth or for improvement in some of the things that we do. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is the biggest transformation that was needed to be, I think, recognized in the document as it's been put in front of you today. So from 2005 until this significant update, the document was pointed towards the completion of that period of the comp plan that existed. So we had a vision drawn out that was talking about 2 urban centers, one in downtown, one in Overlake. It talked about a downtown park. It talked about, eventually we added, Sound Transit coming. But as we got through, or started with the update of our comp plan, the Redmond 2050 plan, we were we delivered, and now we needed to update and really start focusing on now how do we achieve that next vision. And this is something that I touched on a little bit earlier today, which is sort of the flow of information from the community into the decisions that we make, not just for budget, but also in the planning of our programs. And so when we first implemented the long-range financial strategy and started putting action around it, community input or being community informed was not really where we were. Departments really managed the services that they provided. I'm not saying that we didn't have great partnerships in the community or across departments. It just wasn't something that we could really speak to, answer, or know if we were on the right track or wrong track. And so the first focus, really focused effort of community input was on the budget. It was really the first place that we opened the doors and said, what do you want? What are you interested in? There was a tremendous amount of participation in those early conversations, and those are what formed the first set of budget priorities for the city. We had 6 in the beginning. As you'll notice now, we've narrowed down to 2. And from there then, we started then each budget cycle, checking back in with community members to right check, wrong check. But along the way, building in those community engagement requirements or efforts in really every planning effort that comes through council and every strategic plan that comes through council. So the way I see it now is that with the adoption of the comp plan, all of those items in blue, the strategic plan, the programmatic functional plans, the comprehensive plans that inform investments that are needed in the capital side of things, those plans then roll up into citywide plans. They are reflected in the comp plan. They are reflected in the long-range capital investment strategy. They are a part of or should be spoken to in the long-range financial strategy. Really, how are we going to make these commitments sustainable? And so from there, then, things feed into the budget. So the community strategic plan was community, it was community informed and then community informed again through an effort. Comp plan, the functional plans, strategic plans were community informed, as well as the comprehensive plan. So that is really how we get to a lot of the enhancements that you see come through to you now in the budget process. They should be in alignment with something that council has already seen for the most part. There are times when there is new, late breaking news or opportunities and a need for the city to maybe, take an unplanned leap. But for the most part, information should be flowing from those plans into our decisions to allocate dollars. And so I think, not that we need to solve for community engagement now, but when we do have that conversation, understanding what it is that council would like to know and understand or have data or information about to make decisions would be really helpful, and we will get you there. But this is the representation of the city that is spoken to in the current draft of the long-range financial strategy. The document has guiding principles. Currently, the former draft, there was 5. When working through the recommendations, I narrowed it down to 10 through consolidation. But really, they reflect the decision or the questions that we ask ourselves when we're making financial decisions or commitments or council approvals. These are the things that I hear council ask repeatedly, our city leadership ask repeatedly, the teams that work on the budget really ask. And so those are our recommendations for additions to guiding principles. We've provided in the document a description of what they represent. I want to make sure, it's important to me that they're clear. And consolidating things made me nervous, but so did having 25 principles. So I want to make sure that you believe that they reflect where you're at, where our values are, and demonstrate what you want as we move forward. The long-range financial strategy itself is built off of 2 philosophies. They come from the price of government construct. What I've done is really just reword them to make it more clear on what exactly we're trying to achieve. The first is really making sure that we are balancing the level of service that we're providing to the community with what they are investing. It used to be called the price of government, hence the name of the book. And we've made a recommended change to that concept moving forward that I think better reflects, again, what we represent here in Redmond. But it's really about making sure that we are not overburdening the community. There is this band with which there is a comfort level for constituents too low, and there is probably a service level gap too high, and likely we would see some type of a tax revolt. The other guiding philosophy is that we are intentional about the revenue structure that we have in place. So we want to make sure that we have a diverse mix of revenue sources. We want to make sure that they are collecting from the right customers at the right time, in the right way, at the right calculated amount. We have many programs where we have cost of service philosophies in place, and council's been very clear on the desire to have full cost recovery unless there is a compelling reason to subsidize. There have been policies or code language approved by council repeatedly in the last few years that make sure that if we're doing a CPI adjustment, that the code speaks to that, us maintaining those adjustments. And it talks about really taking into consideration that our community members are not just required to invest in city services. Their dollars go to the county, to the state, to the schools, and we need to be thoughtful about all of the things that are coming in front of the community. So philosophies have not changed, but reworded for some clarity. Our financial strategies on the left, our current state, are in sort of the order that they were implemented. And I've provided a crosswalk to let you know sort of where that now resides. All really important strategies for us. But if I were to explain to you how our financial strategy works, or if I was going to work with another jurisdiction to help guide them in the implementation of something that is similar to ours, I would suggest addressing them in the order that is on the right. And really it is, first of all, understanding our community investment plan. What's our expectation for the amount of investments that our community should be making? How much of our community's income should go towards city services? The next is that revenue policy, that framework that says cost recovery or a blend of taxes and fees, or working, there's working collaboratively to make sure that we have regional partnerships in place to help our dollars be leveraged and go even further. And then there's sort of taking those two pieces, which are really sort of our guidelines, are the boundaries that we work within. The price of government is, too much or too little, and the revenue policy is really about how and what we get in the door to help support the programs that we have implemented. So looking at those two things long range helps us identify challenges, gaps, opportunities, or decisions that we need to make in order to achieve the goals of sustainability. The community-informed citywide planning gets back to that first kind of graphic that we looked at, where really all of the planning efforts that are being done in the city should reflect the priorities or the desired outcomes of our community members, and the strategies that are developed should lead us to those outcomes. And that understanding then feeds into those strategies that fall below it. So economic development is a new strategy. We have an economic development plan. We did not as of the last writing of the long-range financial strategy, and I think it's a really important component to understand what do we need to invest as a city, or support or implement in order to drive economic development the way that it is outlined in that plan, which is really focused on getting the right mix of businesses into the city to make sure that we've got a holistic, complete, diverse set of businesses thriving in Redmond. That drives some of our capital investment needs to figure out what areas need what infrastructure at what level. It's a component. It's not the only component. Obviously our aging infrastructure and all of those things, the replacement of that comes through our comprehensive planning efforts. But when we couple it with what's needed to support the community, it is very helpful. The capital investment program, there's two elements to it. There is a long-term capital investment strategy. It goes out 20 years. Right now, we are working on updating our capital investment strategy to get out to 2050 and in alignment with the newly updated comp plan. The near term, the first 6 years, is what moves forward into the budget as the capital investment program. So the longer range things are the things that are outside of that 6 years that we are aware of and poised to tackle as they work their way into the 6-year program. We are looking to do or have that same level of rigor around our business technology. The TIS department has done a lot to identify all of the different areas that we need to be focused on, and they are quite busy with trying to ensure that we have the right guidelines and priorities in place for their program, but for me and for council, understanding what those future needs are so that we aren't surprised by them will be helpful. Right now we have, I would say, a 6-year outlook, but there's quite a bit that falls under our technology department, licensing, software support services, and as we just heard from there, those costs are escalating really faster than a lot of the other cities' costs. So to be a little bit more strategic about what's going on in technology, I think will be helpful, and I think that we are making really good progress. Our community-based budget process is really kind of where we started with the last, or with the implementation of the long-range financial strategy, or our transition to the framework as you see it now. Community engagement or involvement is an important aspect to make sure that we are still right track, wrong track. We have tended to, in the last few years, utilize that feedback for things that are in front of us in that moment that are not a part of another plan. So how we looked at community engagement during that pandemic is different than how we looked at it this year, which was on, updating our outcomes and trying to make progress on the performance measurement or management piece. Last time was, implementing budgeting for equity lens to our budgeting. But again, we will figure out sort of what that right level of community engagement is, and we will get us there. The next two things, fiscal resilience and reserve management, those are things that we do on a ongoing basis, but I do also think that for me as finance director, that is where I see opportunity for us to make some improvements to what we currently have outlined as our strategy. So we, early on in this biennium, early 2025, recognized, there is a changing shift with this administration, and led us to discuss concerns about maybe needing to put some contingency budget plans in place. We are working on that strategy. So far, what we've been able to get in place or document is what we believe is sort of phase one, right? If we get hit with a typical economic downturn, what would that mean and how would we react? And that's kind of a quick and dirty, being able to turn around and make sure we're okay. But really where we want to be is at a level where we can be informed about deciding what we are going to continue funding or not continue funding, or what revenues we're going to continue to seek or not continue to seek. So we're trying to get at another level of detail that just makes it really clear of what we consider to be priority or core services that we would put above other services if we had to. And then what does recovery look like? So I will be working, in coordination with other city departments as well as council to get us across the line in sort of feeling comfortable that we have a plan in place, or at least the outline of what a plan should be if that were to happen. And our reserve management falls under that as well. You know, we don't want to just sit idly. You know, we want to be very proactive when it comes to how we are planning and resourcing ourselves for the future. Performance management is another area of kind of acknowledgement that there is a need to bring together all of these measures that you've heard about through these department discussions, or you've seen in the budget, or you've seen other places, and make them make sense. And so we are trying to provide more information in the budget when it is proposed, and more in the final reporting of the budget when it is complete on what occurred or we expect to occur, not just on the financial performance side, but on the outcome side. So we have been working with with all of the departments on updates to performance measures, to dashboards, to outcomes. But we are also working on a report, a performance report, that will provide you the graphics and the data and the story, the context, the narrative, to help really understand or retell that story to your constituents. So we are working with the communications department to bring that document to life, and we are hoping to bring that, a draft of that to council in July when we come back and have another touch on where we are with community engagement or the outcome maps as we move forward. So I think the last, or the two at the bottom is where I believe that there is some work to be done in strengthening some of those strategies. And I've acknowledged, I think in there, you know, where I believe the organization needs to go, but certainly look forward to council's feedback. The community investment rate, I just wanted to spend just a couple of minutes introducing you to sort of how we view the data that's currently in front of us, and just make sure that council is sort of aware of the trend that we're seeing, and has the opportunity to ask questions before we sit down and have our first conversation about it. So again, the community investment rate is reflects the amount of community resources that are invested into city services. And council policy is currently between 5 and 5.5%. There have been a couple of times that we have touched base with council on sort of that range. How did we get there? And it's really about sort of finding that sweet spot. When we are working with our actual data from 2024 now and working our way forward, you can see that we are starting to fall below that 5 and 5.5% range. From the analysis that Haritha and I have started, it is more likely that, or quite likely, that investment rate is declining, not because city services are declining or that our revenues are declining, it's that our community is growing. And so because our community is bigger, that may mean that we would want to talk about increasing some of the services that we have. So we can talk about that range. We can talk about opportunities as we go forward. I just wanted to kind of orient you to where we are. We've also put in here a graph of how we look at, simply, look at our planning period. So all of our forecasts for all of the city's operating funds, capital funds, primary funds, little funds go out 6 years. We look at beginning fund balance, ending fund balance, the revenues and the expenditures. And our graph right now is looking a little atypical. And the reason is because you can see those three big bumps at the bottom, and that is the one-time dollars that have come in from the level of development that we've been seeing happen. So it is dollars from development activities. It is development from Sound Transit, from the Microsoft refresh, just from all of the private projects going on within the city. And those have been funding a lot of our expenditures going forward on the capital side. We have sort of potentially reached, the end of receiving that level of one-time funds. And as that occurs, you will see more stress come towards kind of keeping those ongoing revenues and ongoing expenditure lines in alignment. This includes everything, and when we kind of sit down to look at this, I think it would be helpful to sort of scale things back to look at the general fund and ongoing. We will kind of dissect this into smaller areas so we can help provide you with a clearer picture of what's occurring within our financials. The long-range financial strategy has also been, I think, redesigned with the idea in mind that council or a community member or a staff member should be able to pick up that document as a resource. So we've tried to provide the supporting documentation that you would have otherwise had to go out and seek. We have provided information about the priorities of the community strategic plan, of the comp plan within the contents of the document, so you can see the alignment across those planning efforts. But we've also provided some documentation on what we utilize as revenues, how we calculate certain things, and some history on the long-range financial strategy. What is next here? Okay. So with the long-range financial strategy, I think, in the end we can talk about review, feedback, how to best have those those discussions, what would be helpful to council. You are receiving tonight, or a couple weeks ago, your first view of our draft fiscal policies. They had really our same, some of our same goals, where we really needed to look at the voice that those fiscal policies were written in. There were many different authors of those fiscal policies over the years. There was a lot of repetitive language. There was, I think, some kind of misalignment of where information was and where it would best be in order for people to quickly find what it is that they needed. We also wanted to make sure that what we were producing is something that we could then make available online as a resource. So we've been sort of intentionally designing that to make it easy once it is posted online. We have a lot of guidance in terms of what professionally, legally should be in our policies from our Government Finance Officers Association, from the legal documents that we sign when we issue bonds, from what we are required to report for accounting. And we have made sure that those have all been reviewed by finance staff, by management, and we are now working with external support that we have to make sure that they don't see any gaps there. So we have a bond team that helps us issue bonds. They're looking at our policies. We have a legal team here now within the city of Redmond, and they're providing or will be providing some guidance too, just to see if they see any risks. So we were looking for just clarity, consolidation, clear information, and the availability to kind of easily read it. The improvements really fall into some different buckets. Really, the first one is sort of that acknowledgement that we may need to take action during times where there is an economic downturn. So we didn't have a policy in place that said we may need to revisit these allocations, and that's a recommendation that we not only have a policy, but we have a strategy to support it. A lot was added to the capital side to add in some new types of allowable financing options, such as leasing equipment. We have added in some language to help manage risk on the capital side. So there is discussion about, in the policies, about what's approved by council, when, what the checkpoints are, what the milestones are, how a contingency is developed, and a material change policy that's required by the transportation benefit district. And so we've strengthened that language as well. We, in the capital investment area, after sort of internal review with city departments and a check-in on where we are in the implementation of our asset management program, made me feel comfortable and confident that that has enough substantial decisions made and guidance available to be included as a strategy there. The under financial compliance, we have provided a suggestion that quarterly reporting can revert back to monthly reporting. Monthly reporting is what we had in place prior to the 23-24 budget. At that time, then the director in place at that time changed that reporting frequency to quarterly, which we do at the staff reports. It was taking just a lot of time to check in on things that didn't move or very quickly. But we have a read-only option now available with the committee meetings. And so perhaps that's a way to share information through the council process without having to take time at the committee meetings. Just open to whatever helps get the financial information in front of council or in front of the community in a timely manner. We do post the information available on the website, but just want to make sure that it's easily accessible by folks that may need it. We have also expanded some of the language around our internal controls to not only document what we're doing, but also to help us sort of enforce the need for those controls. The investment policies, I'm hoping you have read every single word of, thank you. So the investment policies were in a standalone document, and they go through the same rigor and they go through the same approval process. They are much more detailed, so I acknowledge that there's sort of a level of detail that's provided in those investment policies. But I think it's important that they are available to council, available to the community, and I think it's confusing if they are kind of somewhere else. But I will take your feedback on that, and we can certainly move forward in any direction. But I just wanted to make it clear of sort of where we stand with our policies. So, like I said, we have some internal review that will continue to happen as we develop the budget. We may decide to implement a new policy. We may decide to implement a new program that would require either a strategy or a policy to help guide what we're doing. I do plan to come back to council in June, July, May, to check in with council, but I don't know if that's the best way to facilitate the review. Typically, what we do is put the documents out on a council SharePoint site and provide council each with your own version of the document. Then we can take your feedback and incorporate it all into one document and kind of work through those changes together. And so, you know, I am really amenable to anything that will help council walk out of the process feeling like you've set the tone that you want to for the city moving forward.
Thank you, Director Cochran and Deputy Director Nara and your teams. Appreciate that, and we will kind of wrestle with next steps as we get the conversation going here. I also want to lay the groundwork a little bit for our newer colleagues. Congratulations. We meant to get to this work in 2025. We didn't, so now you get to do it with us, which is also really great because it means that you get to have input on these policies that will help shape decisions we'll make later in the year. It is my belief that these policies are paramount to our fiduciary duties. This is where the rubber meets the road. So this is really important stuff. I want to open it up for responses and questions and things like that, and also feedback. There's a suggestion to have SharePoint sites where folks can give edits. We also sometimes do the matrix. It may be helpful for council to identify what are the decisions that we're interested in deliberating and maybe bring those back to committee decision by decision, you know, work through that list. So at this time, I'll go ahead and open it up for feedback. I might suggest that we start with, you know, overall feedback, or do the long-range financial strategies first and then come back to the fiscal policies, if that makes more sense. So I will leave it up to the group to determine what level of input they have tonight.
Excellent. I like it.
Councilmember Kritzer.
I'll just kick us off. It's a lot. And I guess in terms of process moving forward, I do think both of these are very important documents, and so I appreciate the opportunity, if we wanted to, going forward, to have that SharePoint opportunity to comment, since some of us may have a bunch of different things, and maybe then get a matrix back of any questions. That's just my preference. Since I think we won't be able to answer every question that we have tonight, or ask all the questions. But I do think it's worth spending the time to dig in and make sure we get it right. I think one thing on that would be helpful, since there are significant revisions on this, and I know we saw this as, some of us who are on council, the initial work on this with some of the proposed red lines and changes. Maybe we don't need like the full red line doc, although that might just be easiest if you emailed that out so that people could like cross-reference it. Or alternatively, it could be something like being able to call out anything significantly new or significantly changed, which you kind of did here, but I don't know if there's a best way to do that, since there is so much change here.
We can certainly even upload not only the original documents, so where we started, the red line as it looked like before, then I changed the whole layout. So that way you can review sort of the narrative that was in existence and then changed. For the fiscal policies, we also have a crosswalk of sort of what the policy was and what section it was in and sort of where it resides now and the different kind of the consolidated or more concise verbiage. So we can provide you a crosswalk for the fiscal policies as well.
I appreciate that. And I will say, because I have been through being on the council for a little while, some of the revisions on this in the past, and I remember working on edits to sections during the pandemic, for example, and looking at a bunch of changes at that time, right, to some of these with new views on how we think about, for example, preparing for instability. Or uncertain times. So, but I know some of my colleagues have not been through all of that, and I think it could be really helpful as well going forward. I'll just say, kind of high level, one thought that or kind of two places that jump out for me philosophically on the, I'm trying to remember the strategies, I think, was on maintaining prior investments and on value proposition. I see how you indicated where those ended up going, but I do wonder if I guess I'm interested in how we kind of maintain the emphasis on both of those things, since I think they get a little bit hidden in the way that we're showing up there. In particular, I think the maintaining prior investments to me is an important principle. I'm fine with it. It clearly fits in our capital investment strategy, but it is something we've heard a lot from community, and in our recent experience, the question of how we maintain our existing infrastructure and investments feels like it is very present for our community right now.
And I think that is sort of additional support to making sure that we are speaking to asset management and the implementation of that program in there. I think it falls under there, if you would agree. That's where I kind of plan to put that narrative.
Yeah, and I guess I would just be interested in how we make sure that it's called out enough that future councils and future kind of administrations are ensure that we do use that as a way to make sure that we invest enough in every budget to hold that up.
Councilmember Forsyth.
Thank you. This is a lot of work, Director Cochran and
Just kidding.
I just have to call that out, because reading through this, it's so much more clear than I've seen in the past, and it's so much more digestible. And even earlier tonight, when I was trying to find something in last cycle's budget, and the frustration I was feeling as a council member trying to find that one thing, and then looking at these documents and going, oh my gosh, this is so much more clear and more user-friendly. So I just have to give you kudos and appreciation for how much more digestible this is. So thank you. And I know you've been hearing that feedback from us for a while, so I really, really appreciate all the work that's gone into this. The one thing I'm probably just missing, in our climate emergency declaration, we had asked about divestiture from stocks and things like that that don't align with our values. So I don't necessarily see that in here, and just please tell me if I'm missing it.
Well, you apparently did not read the investment policies.
Okay, I'll get down there.
So it is in there, and another reason that I want to share that information with the community. Our investments are managed through a state pool, and by the way that program runs provides us with that protection. And that is stated in there, but we can call that out as a goal or a philosophy or whatever we want to at the beginning of that section to make sure that it's very clear to the community that we stand behind our values, even with our investments.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Councilmember Nueva Camina.
Thank you.
Council Vice President, excuse me.
Thank you, President. Director and Deputy Director, the amount of work, as Councilmember Forsyth had mentioned, is immense. There are many things that are going to make it even easier. My first budget year was much smoother than what I had heard it was before, so that definitely set the bar high. I'm looking forward to this process now even being more refined, so thank you for all of that. My 2 cents on how to get information. I love the idea of having it on SharePoint. This way each of us can get in there and give you our feedback, so I love that. And I know in our prior meeting in our committee that I was quite direct, and I will be again now, because it bears being repeated in this context as well. We've got on page 4 of the presentation 4 of 17 that our long-range financial strategy is going to help guide decisions that balance communities' needs, expectations, and level of service. Absolutely, I think that's great. That had me pull up on my laptop as I was listening, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I can't get above, there's 5 levels, and we do a phenomenal job because we're Redmond. We are tech savvy, we are highly educated, we are all those things. And we also have a good amount of our community that can't get above level 3. They can't even get above level 2. There's a handful that's at level 1. So I want to make sure that I'm bringing forward those voices that we're saying, hey, yes, this is all wonderful, these dazzly things that we have, and we also need to make sure that we're all coming up, not just maintaining this and continuing to grow the gap.
Thank you. And thank you for reminding me of something I forgot to mention. So with the development of our READY plan and having a resource there available to us, Anita will be helping to kind of review, take an initial review at our documents and point out anything that she believes that would be impactful in either how they're put together or written. But any type of feedback, guidance, input is extremely helpful to Haritha and I as we learn more about how to make those concerns and desires actionable. So if council can help us understand what we're trying to achieve, we can work on those strategies and policies to strengthen it.
Great. Follow up, if I may, Chair. I think a great place to start was, I believe it was when I was talking to the executive team at the last meeting, is partnering with our CBOs, our community-based organizations. They already have an immense amount of data. They are of the community. They already have a pulse on that. It's an invaluable resource that we have as long as we nurture those relationships. Because again, they've got the data. They're of the community, and they can tell us exactly what those needs are, so that will help guide decisions that balance communities' needs, expectations, and levels of service. Great, thank you.
You're welcome. I think Councilmember Prakria.
Thank you, and I will echo my colleagues in thanking you for all of this work. There is a lot here. There's a lot that I learned just from reading the fiscal policies. I would like to say one thing I feel like would be, very helpful to me in my first budget year, and to be quite honest, my financial background is Econ 201. So I would love a lot of examples in the fiscal policies are fairly abstract, or a lot of the definitions, like the difference between a revenue bond and a general obligation bond, or things like this. I would love to see, tangible examples of this is where we used a revenue bond in the city, or this is where we used a fiscal bond. At least for me, that would be, incredibly helpful as we make these budget decisions moving forward. But, thank you for all of this. It was a lot of learning.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Parsi.
For the future, I would love to learn a little bit more about when we think about price of government or community investments, sorry, I forget the new word. I would like to learn more about how that percentage is allocated. You know, we can, in many ways, we can get to that number. And I think having an idea of how we kind of, where we put the burden and being more intentional about that choices and having that more transparently shown, I think would be valuable.
Rita and I have been working on sort of how to make that information graphically depicted for you as well as ourselves. And so I think that we are close to having something available, and our hope is to also put that into the document so that we can see what the outcome of that policy has been so far and how it's changed over time.
Thank you. Councilmember Soni?
First of all, thank you for sharing this information. It's a lot, not to deny. And, but it's required at the same time. So basically, I've been thinking about the principle, and I'm one of the person who's always very vocal about in terms of when we are talking about outcome-based financial planning and community-informed service outcomes. When we are in the community, they want to see whatever the taxes and the financial impacts that's happening on them. What is the return? So they want to get a visibility of how this has been used. I think somewhere if we are able to put more easily understandable for a normal community member who are not very financial savvy will be very helpful.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and chime in with a couple of my thoughts, and we will also need to make a decision on process. I agree with my colleagues. Thank you so much for the review. And the reform, I think, is maybe the right word to describe the overhaul of these policies to better reflect our values. And we actually did use the SharePoint strategy a couple times last year to get going on a couple of the preambles and things like that. I'll start with my comments on the long-range financial strategies and acknowledge to my colleagues, I have identified, I think, 3 possible decisions that are pretty important, and we will need to decide. And these aren't answers staff can give us. These are, conversations that we all need to have together, and choices that we need to deliberate on. The most important one is the community investment plan. Hands down, that's been identified. And if folks haven't had a chance, there is a good representation of the formula in the appendices, so do check that out. I think our considerations around equity really do matter here. It does compare the city revenue to personal incomes. Don't worry, we're not using AMI here, but we have a lot of decisions to make there. And I will acknowledge we did receive one piece of feedback that is a bit about our choice in front of us, but also an anomaly in the text, so I'll just forward that typo on or that consideration. I think another thing that we need to deliberate on is regarding the third principle, which is the strategic alignment. This text suggests alignment to Redmond 2050 and the community strategic plan. And we need to talk about that. So the community strategic plan, I will summarize and probably get it wrong, but was a tool developed by prior councils in order to focus a body of work. And it has not been updated in a couple of years. I think maybe one touch in my time on the council. And we also have the comprehensive plan now. So there's a bit of a question like, do we need to look at it? Is it up to date, or also does the comprehensive plan stand alone? Do we need the strategic plan? So I think there's work to be done there. And I know that staff have personally asked me some questions about that plan. but there are a few places throughout the strategies that seek to align to that plan and things in that plan, and we need to validate if that's the right move. And the third comes back to kind of that community input piece, which we've already identified. It does say, as a suggested policy, we must include taxpayers in deliberations about new taxes. Love that. So we probably need to prescribe here some principles of equity and about how that will go. And I will say as a closing remark on this set of policies, like, we get a lot of value as residents of this city for about $1,200 a year per person, right, with our property tax bills. Or if you walk back the formula, the example is the average resident, what they get for $1,200 a year from the city of Redmond is really phenomenal. So I just have to also say that I do believe the city of Redmond provides really high level of service. There's a couple other decisions on the fiscal policies that I'll call out. I think, again, council should consider these in the preamble around the development and maintenance of that body of work. I think there's an opportunity to propose that we have a policy about, there is a policy suggested currently that we review these biennially, and it has been a struggle to do that in budget years. I suggest that we have a conversation about pinning the policy to the non-budget year in the future. And when it comes to the biennial budget amendments and the policies related to that, there's some notations about the role of the executive office in preparing the preliminary budget, and then council's role in making amendments, and as was discussed, how we weather economic downturns. But the other way that money appropriated by council isn't spent is also a concern. So I wonder if council is interested in exploring a policy here to create a little bit more of a backstop about priorities that we fund should be spent. And if that is a conversation that we want to have, to the limited efficacy that could possibly have. And then the reserve policy is a policy that we, I'm skipping now down to the operating reserves policy. That's a decision we made in this last biennium to go from 9% to 12%, and you can see that written here. And I just want to be sure that we're on track for that, and that 12 might be the correct number moving forward.
Yeah, and we were at 8, and now we're at 9.
We were at 8, and now we're at 9.
Yeah, it's a big move.
Okay,
It's
so
actually
we'll need to
millions
revisit.
of dollars, but
We'll need to revisit that.
yeah. So we have been working to since the implementation of moving from 8 to 12, have been working to build those reserves. So we never intended to go straight there. That's a big swoop. So we've been working to get ourselves up to that 12% target, and we're working on a forecast right now, so we can let you know when we think that we would be there. And what some options that we have to get there sooner if desired.
Okay, thank you. So those are, I have some like line edits, just things to help with the text that I will put in the SharePoint if that's the way we're gonna choose, but wanted to share with the council. I think there are some decisions and conversations we should have here and work through them. That was my list, and that concludes round 1. Are there other thoughts on this body of work? Councilmember Kritzer.
I'll just follow up with a comment on the previous comment, which I appreciate the issues, and I do think we should probably in the future review on this be able to tackle some of those discussions comprehensively. I think one of the last things that you called out, that the council president called out, was potentially adding something specific about ensuring that budgeted expenses are spent, and that connection between the council's intent and the things that we budget and the administering and executing upon those things, and specifically what it looks like as we monitor throughout a biennium, what that looks like. Obviously tonight that was exactly this was part of that cadence, actually, to hear about how the funds have been spent. And I think it might be interesting at a policy level to codify at what points do we have touch points on those things. And what do we all want to expect at a policy level in terms of how we ensure that happens. I'll also note on the community strategic plan, I think it's a really good call out. And I do note in the guiding principles, I was looking at it and thinking, I see the community strategic plan in here and some of the new guiding principles, which I will say, I don't know if it needs to be community strategic plan, but I like some of the things that came out of that that were really the buckets that I see come up again and again from community, right? Whether it's environmental stewardship or sustaining infrastructure investments or DEI, these are things we're hearing from our community, and I really like seeing those in there. One question that I'll just raise that I was unclear about in here, and that I think would be good going forward, is this proposing a change? We have taken out some of the mentions around budgeting by priorities, and then there's the discussion of budgeting by outcomes. Is this proposing the change to call it budgeting by outcomes? Is it can you just clarify a little bit more on the vision for that and the budgeting by priorities?
Yes. So as I've worked here my whole childhood, the conversations have, again, really transformed, changed, grown into conversations about outcomes. About what we're going to get for the money or for the programs that we're going to implement. Sort of the same way as I looked at the price of government. Conversations used to be about cost. How much is it going to cost? And although those obviously are important questions to be able to answer, it's really about what are we getting? What is the return on investment? Or what are we just, making sure that the community has at their disposal? So for me, it was just an alignment that it was a terminology that I thought better fit how we think, act, and show up in our values.
So, just one.
I don't want to talk about budgeting by priorities ever again.
Well, I guess the question is, in terms of the actual implementation of the budget or the way it shows up, would we still have those kind of buckets, or is it going to be a fundamental shift in the way the budget shows up?
I don't have that in me. So we will still continue to focus ourselves on the budget priority groupings that we have, but really when we're talking about and making those decisions, we're really budgeting not just to make sure we're spending in these priorities, but we're really working towards those outcomes.
Thank you. Councilmember Parsi?
I just wanted to check in to see if examples of budget by outcome, like if you had any concerns about it or if you wanted to see an example, but just kind of wanted to double click on your comment.
Councilmember Kritzer?
I guess I would just say that I think there's probably a discussion as we're looking at this about if we're changing, because that has been kind of a fundamental way we've described it. And honestly, I think there's a bigger conversation around, because the idea, I think, behind budgeting by priorities, especially when it was first implemented, was let's go to our community, let's figure out their priorities, and then let's budget to those things rather than doing incremental budgeting. I like the idea of saying, let's go to our community, let's figure out those outcomes. One thing I'm very interested in is, if we're going to do that, similar to the priorities, we can call it what we want, is how do we truly assess those outcomes in a way that doesn't just kind of give them a list and say, sound good, and also, I think, how do we address the tendency towards incremental budgeting, even the fact that we saw the easiest way for us to have these conversations like we had earlier tonight is by department, and looking at what are the ongoing expenses they're going to bring in the baseline, which essentially is incremental. I think I'm interested in these policies. One question that you'll see in my comments that I'll probably raise is also when is the moments when we do, that we put in the policies for a bigger revisiting, for looking at efficiencies, for saying, what are things we should stop doing? What are things we should, in addition to what are things we should start doing? And we keep ourselves from also just kind of moving forward and saying, okay, we're always going to do healthy and sustainable, as a bucket, but really, because I think most of the time people would say, yeah, that seems like a good outcome. But how do we move that forward? So I think these are discussions to have as part of these policies.
That's great. Thank you. Other comments? Topics for later deliberation? Okay, what I might suggest is, Director Cochran, if we're going to go the SharePoint route to let people provide their individual feedback, staff will collate that feedback, including what I imagine will be a list of decisions to deliberate. We'll need a deadline on that, and probably it is a hefty amount of material, so probably a couple weeks for council members to be able to interact with that material. But a deadline, I feel like, would be a helpful tool.
Would it be, I would like to work with my staff to get information prepared and work on drafting just communication or instructions or a plan, and then just work with council leadership quickly before moving forward to make sure that we're all on the same page, timelines align, expectations are clear for everybody. Does that work?
I'm seeing some head nods, so I think that'll work. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. And thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Drive safely. All right, the last item on our agenda tonight is council talk time. Thank you so much for everyone's attention tonight. Are there items for council talk time? Council Vice President Nueva Camina.
Thank you. We mentioned a couple of times earlier today about community feedback on the budget. We've got council conversations that is slated for May and then another in September. The one in the fall, it was also kind of floated to do that as a town hall, possibly have community input around the budget then. We heard concern about maybe that's too far into the budget process to get adequate community feedback. So I wanted to make sure that we brought that back to the table so that we could have some discussion about that.
Councilmember Forsyth.
Do we know when the mayor plans to drop the budget?
The first week of October.
Okay. I think timing-wise, it could still work for us to have town hall to listen for what those priorities are, so that we're carrying that into what the changes are. It does feel a bit late, but I feel like we could make it work. So I'm open to changing that council conversation from a town hall to a more listening session. But I'm open to hearing others' comments.
Yeah, and let's have that conversation. And remember, it's not changing from anything to anything because we actually haven't decided, just something got written down. And one other just piece of information I'll remind us all about is that if we do want to take advantage of it, our next focus newsletter story, which council usually crafts, is due on April 22nd. So that's coming up. If there's something that we would like to advertise in that space, that will drop in mailboxes in July. So I'm just flagging this is a large communication asset. So Councilmember Kritzer.
I'd say I do think earlier would be better, because if we get it, let's say we got like a lot of feedback and things that we really want to do, and the mayor, we already have kind of the drafted budget, then it means we probably have to add a lot more meetings and back and forth on things within a much shorter amount of time. So I do think knowing earlier, and as I mentioned earlier, I think having the mayor there and the staff potentially to be able to hear some of these things and for us to coalesce and say, what are some of the priorities we heard, and then what are some things we want to convey that we're hoping we'll see in the draft budget, so that so the staff can go and do the balancing to say, okay, where would we find the money for this if we heard something significant that wasn't originally in there as an enhancement, for example? I think that would be useful. The question of whether we use a council conversation for it, I think I heard earlier there might be, maybe we add an extra like budget town hall or something, or we do something else, like maybe it's working with our community-based organizations to do a workshop session at the Together Center or something, you know, similar to how we did with 2050. I remember going to one that was amazing where we had all these different groups of folks and we were sitting at tables and brainstorming and getting input. Like, we could do something like that. The deliberative idea of budgeting that Councilmember Parsi brought up earlier, that could be, I don't know, I guess I would just say we don't necessarily need to choose council conversations for that purpose as well.
Thank you. Councilmember Prakriya?
You know, I'm absolutely in favor of either holding a town hall, doing some sort of collaborative event, something like that. But I think that there is, you know, a strict dichotomy between community outreach and council accessibility, where I feel like a town hall is a perfect example of council being accessible to the public. But if we say this is our budget outreach, that just rings off alarm bells in my head for the same reason that, you know, we brought up a number of concerns earlier about the, 12 to 14 people who were surveyed in two groups earlier. I would far rather our deliberative data from the community on budget priorities come from a more randomized sample than folks who have the time and have the mechanisms to show up to a budget town hall. And I think it's great if we do that, but that cannot be the only thing we do when it comes to community outreach for the budget.
Councilmember Stoney?
I just want to remind, like August, for 3 weeks, we might not be meeting in the regular council meetings.
We have an August recess, that is correct.
Yeah, August recess. So if we are planning a town hall in September, so that's what I wanted to understand, if it's like the beginning of September or late of September, because we want to plan everything accordingly so that, we are also, in terms of for being the council, we are available to answer any of those questions. So maybe using that time, the recess time, when we are able to collect feedback and then we work together, not as a town hall, but I definitely think I like idea of Council Member Kritzer, to have a workshop kind of a place where we can have inputs. We collect more inputs from community members, but they should also get some time to, go over the changes or the proposals that we are making. So maybe using that August time frame for that, and then once we are back in September, we can go over some of these things as a part of a workshop, and then keep a town hall separate, because town hall would be addressing more other issues, apart from just the budget. So having that accessibility for the town hall would be required.
Any comments on Councilmember Stoney's suggestion? Councilmember Forsyth?
I'm not sure I was clear. Was that suggesting we add something in August?
So August could be time when we are sharing some of the changes, or, so that we have enough time to collect that feedback while we are on a recess. And then in September, when we are back, then we can host a workshop, maybe for second week of September.
Individually, we're seeking community input.
Yeah, so that people have enough time to give us the feedback. Then once we are back, then we can host a workshop and we are able to address some of those things or hear more, and then, use that time. Not a town hall. But having a town hall and workshop, I don't know if that will work with everybody's schedule.
I think this is all a lot of important factors for us to think about. We might not solve it tonight. I do want to acknowledge that we had the mayor at our budget retreat, and she is aware of the priorities that were identified by the council, which are informed by I really like the dichotomy of council accessibility versus outreach. All of that factors into the things that we brought into the room for that. The preliminary budget is now being drafted by staff and will be, delivered by the mayor. So to Councilmember Kritzer's point, if there's something more I think what we're trying to do is both be accessible, which I love because that's one of our values as a body, and also to overcome a gap that we identified today in a process that many of us feel is insufficient. So it's that piece that we're trying to solve for, but we probably can't do that alone, given that currently the preliminary budget is being drafted, by the executive's office and the directors. So that's another piece of this. Councilmember Kritzer?
Yeah, and I would just say, just to be super clear, I think by September on the executive side, even though they won't deliver it till October, the budget's pretty much baked. They're just, doing, probably Director Cochran will correct me. I'm sure a lot goes on in the final, but it seems like it's also like formatting and stuff. But a lot of the biggest decisions have been kind of made. So if we wanted to influence earlier what shows up and what comes to us, I would just say earlier. The other thing I'll just say is in terms of town hall versus council conversations, I think it is really, I do really like the ones that can be outside with more conversation in the summer and early fall, so it's the best weather. We did do a town hall not this year, but the year before in the winter quarter. And I did think that was a good time because it's so rainy and it was a packed room at the Senior Community Center. But it was actually probably our best attended council conversation. So maybe now I'm convincing myself out and saying, let's do a town hall this year. But I will say that I think it's nice if we do it, if we choose a time when the weather's not great to do it, then rather than missing out on having cool park conversations.
Councilmember Forsyth.
Thank you. So I'm just going back to what I had said earlier in the committee meeting, where I think if we're going to hit the right pacing, we take the opportunity for the May council conversation to have, even if we're doing round tables, we can just have one of the tables topics be, what are your budget priorities? I think that timing-wise, it makes sense. I think we're kind of spinning our wheels trying to make something work in September, which probably isn't going to work for everybody's timeline. So I think we're ahead of the schedule to figure out what May looks like. So I think we just jump on that as working budget into that somehow. I also am sitting here thinking about the community strategic plan and the last time we did an update and how so many of those things actually informed the topic areas within our budget. So I do think it's worth looking at that. We have a bajillion strategic plans now. We didn't, but I do think that one is still very valuable because it kind of is our most outward facing to the community. So I do think it's worth revisiting that community strategic plan as well.
Thank you. Can I first get feedback on the proposal from Councilmember Forsyth, which I'm going to add one element to keep the council conversation on May 21st, and to also add to the communications plan around it that this is a great opportunity because it's a budget year, so come and talk to your council. I already see 1 thumbs up, 2 thumbs up, so we're kind of aligning on that. Okay, thank you so much. And thank you also for your interest in revisiting the community strategic plan. It's good to know. Is it on your work plan? I'm so sorry. Is it on Councilmember Kritzer's work plan already for your committee?
I don't think it is. I do think, I agree. I think it should be on it. I could add it if it probably would fit in my committee, but I don't think we had it programmed up. So, okay. Can I make one other comment on this?
Sure, and then we'll go back to Councilmember Forsyth.
I would just say I'm in for what Councilmember Forsyth is suggesting. I think that's it's a good making sure definitely we have that as one outreach. I think it's a yes and that we should also follow up this conversation of is there anything else we wanted to do, especially with intentionally engaging community-based organizations and parts of our community if we want to follow up on that. So I'd appreciate suggestions from council leadership.
I will just add that the last time I believe the last time the community strategic plan was updated was when I was council president, and I believe that is the role of council leadership to work with the COO. It doesn't go through the committee, is what the process was the last time we did it. So just wanted to clarify.
Okay, I want to give folks, I do appreciate that, and we can absolutely do that. I do want to give folks, though, a chance to think about that and have a chance to look at that. I flagged that there was this connection tonight. That doesn't mean you all are instantly convinced that it's important. So how about we revisit this body of work and see if there's council interest in reviewing the community strategic plan. Does that work? Okay. So in summary, if I have the decisions that we've come up with so far, it's keep the council conversation on May 21st, brand it as a budget opportunity, and continue the conversation on how to engage with communities who might not otherwise be able to engage, and that is through the work with our trusted partners in our community-based organizations. We will have that continued conversation with staff. Also, we'll revisit the possibility of a touch on the community strategic plan before the budget kicks off. We'll need more feedback on that. Other items on this engagement topic? Another question I posed earlier today was around September. If we are to do a community conversation of some kind in September, do we also want the booth at the Downtown Redmond Art Walk? I hear a yes, we should from the former arts commissioner. Some thumbs up around the room. And Councilmember Forsyth's question.
Do we know when draw is? So Mayor and I have been invited to a housing trip in Vancouver in the middle of September. So I'm worried about missing whatever we do is my concern. I absolutely love draw. I think it's fabulous, and we could have a booth there and even potentially expand it so it's already on a night that we're not double taxing staff to do an additional thing, and community is already going to be out. So I like the idea of maybe taking the draw opportunity and enhancing it.
The Downtown Redmond Art Walk has already been published. There's a date. Was the answer stated?
Yes, I'm sorry, Chair. September 17th.
Okay, thank you.
I'd just say I always enjoy tabling at Draw, and usually we table right next to the city staff as part of the city staff booth. And I feel like I talk to different people at Draw than I talk to sometimes at other events. So I support it, and hopefully if we all pitch into, it's usually only 3 one-hour shifts that we end up doing. So I think it's a good one.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. We will confirm our interest in that. Of course, we'll also have our Derby Days booth in July. Great. Are there other items for council talk time? I saw Councilmember Parsi first, and then the Council Vice President, and then Councilmember Kritzer.
I have a topic about micromobility devices on sidewalks, which is very different from our conversations today. If that's a topic that we're open to talking about, I would love to get your thoughts.
This is our water cooler, so feel free to bring up the topic that you have in mind.
All right. So reading through the ordinance for streets and sidewalks, I learned that bikes and micromobility devices, including battery-powered electric-assisted mobility devices, micromobility devices, are all allowed on sidewalks. I have seen concerns from the public through the matrix. I have heard a lot of feedback from people on different threads. I have seen many cities ban this. And I have concerns, and given that in Transportation Master Plan, pedestrian safety is a top priority, I have concerns about allowing micromobility devices that are now electric powered devices can be really, really fast and go at high speeds. And I would like for us to consider opportunities to make sidewalks safer. And also, one other concern with allowing micromobility devices on sidewalks is that I think that it can distract us from investing in pathways specifically for micromobility devices. So that's my general thoughts about this. We'll love to hear from you all.
Councilmember Forsyth and then Councilmember Procria.
Thank you for bringing this up. I do see this. This is in Title 10 of what we're looking to talk about, I believe, next week. So I'm definitely very interested in continuing that conversation, especially for our accessibility community, where this could be a really big issue for safety reasons. We have a lot of people that like this could be a concern for our elderly community, our community with young kids. If a bicycle or a scooter is flying down the sidewalk and where you're not anticipating to have that interaction, that could be very potentially dangerous. So I agree that I think this is something we should have a bigger conversation about within this section, and thank you for bringing it up.
Councilmember Procria.
I second the comments, and I also just wanted to say as well that we will be touching base on this again next week in my committee, although it's only a 10-minute item, or it's only labeled right now as a 10-minute item.
Thank you. Councilmember Kritzer.
I think in addition, I'm trying to remember, because I know we had a deep conversation about this topic and also about, for example, like also what level, because with some of the now e-motos and some of the regulation around that that we got into, I think it was in the TMP conversation, but I was trying to remember, and it might be helpful if we could reach out to Michael Hintz and the staff that have thought about the policies on this, just to be able to get some kind of loop back to thinking through what it would look like to look a little more deeply at these and any changes that we want to make. I know, I will say, and Council Members Percy and Sony were there, there's a lot of discussion about this in ETP as well. That our neighboring cities are thinking a lot about how different powered micromobility and or bike vehicles can safely move around our city and what types of local regulations there might be on there. So there may be some study to do just overall further on this. But I do know this, it seemed like the staff had spent some time on it. So I guess my request would be if we could get the staff to also follow up so we get some initial context.
Yeah, I think I'm going to recommend Councilmember Parsi, thanks for giving us a heads up that this is a question that you have and it's coming back to committee and a policy interest that you have. The council just invested a lot of time in the TMP and the related, the Safe Streets for All action plan, which was also funded by the federal government, and they are now helping us to implement. So my suggestion would be to reach out to Director Helen, because her staff, have the policy or the expertise leads on that, and to identify the crosswalk between policy decisions we may have already made. We make a lot of them, so it's easy to forget all the little details. And if we have not made a decision on this yet, to also identify the tension that might exist, because those had a lot of community engagement in it as well, and we would just need to, identify all the tensions. That would be my recommendation between now and the committee meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. There were a couple other hands for talk time. Council Vice President Nueva Camina.
Thank you.
And thank you for serving as our Vice President.
Thank you, President Stewart. I wanted to bring us back to the point that you had made, Council President, around we've got this opportunity for communication. We've got a deadline of next week. I believe that you said the 21st or 22nd. That is next week. So we need to make a decision on what we want to communicate in that newsletter.
Yes, and we have offered that opportunity to the council in email as well. So barring any other suggestions, council leadership will be working on that. So let us know your ideas. Other thoughts for council talk time? Councilmember Kritzer?
I think something that has come up in a couple different ways that I think it would be worth us. I wanted to propose that we get on the agenda, if it's not already, of revisiting at some point this year is our cost of service model for parks. It was several years ago that we approved the current one, and we went through a whole process with a consultant that came up with this triangle diagram of what are the things that we fully subsidize and what are the things we ask people to pay fully for, and then all the spots in between and how that aligns with our values. And the park staff uses that to make some of the decisions operationally. But we hear the feedback on that decision, which was made now quite a while ago, on things like the rates at the Redmond Senior and Community Center or youth programming, and I think it would be worth having on the agenda at some point this year a review of that model and the implementation, and whether there's anything we want to talk about in terms of adjustments to it and how it's been implemented in practice, to address some of the issues that I think we often hear about as council members now. Because we did, like, we approved that before RSCC opened, for example, and then that's influenced that. And now there's been some time, for example, on the RSCC for us to discuss that. And I think in particular also, I think having a discussion as part of that around one of the things that got raised as part of the Teen Center discussion comments that we got last week was around, and got raised to me while we were at the OFH event, was the concern about the waivers for teen activity fees, and the fact that teens have to have a parent or guardian sign to get those fee waivers. And I do have some concerns about that because because there's some places, especially if teens need a place or need to be able to participate without, and if they are having situations at home, for example, that may preclude them from being able to get those types of waivers. I just think, or the type of signature from a parent, I think that's just a discussion that we should have maybe sooner than later, and I'd be interested in that discussion at a council level, just in terms of making sure that we're supporting youth being able to access our services freely. So those are just something that I wanted to bring up to the council, see if folks would be interested in putting that for a future agenda discussion. I've just been kind of piecing together all this feedback and thinking that this kind of general cost of service discussion might be useful.
Councilmember Parsi?
Are you thinking of that only in context of the parks, or kind of in the broader context that Director Cochran mentioned, the cost of services as a whole?
I think it might be as a whole. I think mostly it'll show up with parks. I think it would be mostly a discussion with parks.
Thank you. I think here's what I want to offer, team, because I see us fading. It is a good suggestion. Also, the other thing that we don't have for you tonight for council talk time is the matrix with staff comments following up on our budget retreat. You don't have that for today. And when we're starting to talk about scheduling the remaining council time for the year that we do have, I want to make sure that we're scheduling it for the things that matter most. So 2 proposals I've heard tonight: community strategic plan review, the cost recovery policy, and for the parks. That's a worthy topic. We also have several items when we have the full results from the staff where we will want to ask for time. So what I might suggest is we hold these 2 ideas and be able to come back when we do have that list and make sure that we're asking for the right amount of time, because all of that is a living document as well. You know, it is intended to evolve. So if we're going to schedule one of these conversations, I don't want it to take away the opportunity to schedule other conversations. How does that generally sound? Furrowed eyebrows or thumbs up or somewhere in between? Councilmember Kritzer?
Sounds good to me. And I'd say if the idea I raised, if the council felt like it needed to be more like a hopper item, I'm happy to do so. I think I just wanted to kind of put it on the radar as a way to address kind of the ombuds issues I've been seeing coming up. But totally agree that we need to prioritize, and there's only limited time.
Yeah, so even if it came through the hopper, we would still have to make the choice, so, yeah, we've raised some good ideas here tonight. Yeah, okay. Well, we will tentatively plan for that. Councilmember Forsyth?
I was just questioning, I thought it was on the work plan, so I could be wrong for parks.
Okay, let's have Councilmember Soni, having heard the feedback from the council tonight, perhaps you can take a look at the work plan for your committee.
You're asking about, sorry, couldn't get your question. Are you asking about the Parks and Recreations?
You and I together, we can look at the work plan for your committee and look to see if this might already be on the work plan.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, with that, I think we're going to call it a night, and there are no other items of business, so this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.